Chapter 1420. A fierce battle broke out in the air. It was as if two gods were fighting each other. Even outside the great swamp of wind and thunder, one could clearly see that the world there seemed to have been broken, drowned by endless sword chi and divine aura. This kind of battle is simply unheard of. Some of the kings of the empires were shocked. Zhao Jingxian didn't speak. She naturally wouldn't say that she'd seen a similar battle more than once in the region of extinction. Moreover, there was no lack of battles that were even more dangerous and terrifying than this one. Bang! Amidst a deafening collision, the god of barbarians was blasted flying, and his body trembled and twitched. His expression was extremely solemn. He'd never imagined that the opponent he faced today would be so heaven-defying, and he couldn't be judged by convention at all. Clang! The primordial massacre, sword swept up, stirring up a nether river. The phenomenon of fiend gods falling appeared, covering the world. At this moment, Lin Sun was like a peerless sword devil. At this moment, he'd already roughly determined that the battle prowess of the god of berserkers who'd fused with the strength of the 13 shaman kings was roughly similar to Yun Qingbai in the past, and it might even be slightly inferior. Because Yun Qingbai's Tao of the sword was a peerless power, and it was not something that the god of berserkers could compare to. This phantom of the barbarian god was extremely powerful. It was almost the strongest one Lin Sun had ever seen below the Saint Realm. However, strength was strength, and battle prowess was battle prowess. The two were different. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to push him back again. He fell from the sky and hit the ground, shaking the earth and mountains. Even if his skin was rough and his flesh was thick, he still couldn't withstand this kind of devastation. The god of barbarians couldn't help but let out a cry of pain, and all the bones in his body almost fell apart. Boom! Lin Sun descended from the sky and stomped down, intending to crush the head that had just been raised. Get lost! The phantom of the barbarian god roared. The dense totems that covered his entire body suddenly glowed, while blazing divine radiance surged into appearance, and it caused his imposing aura to actually rise explosively. A necklace of skulls hanging on its neck suddenly flew up and turned into a bloody mouth, swallowing Lin Sun. Lin Sun's pupils shrank as he sensed something wrong. Without hesitation, he took out the Tower of Endless Tao and pressed it down fiercely. Boom! When the two collided, the world lost its color and the sun and moon lost their light. In the fierce confrontation, the bloody mouth began to be defeated inch by inch. In the end, amidst the roar, it once again turned into a necklace of skulls. However, in the next moment, the skull necklace broke and fell to the ground. You actually destroyed my clan's sacred treasure. The barbarian god let out a roar that shook the heavens and the earth, and it revealed extreme shock and rage. He seemed to have never imagined that merely a single strike would destroy his strongest saint artifact. He couldn't believe it. One should know that his skull necklace was made from the skulls of saints. It was called the Necklace of the Saint's Skull, and was extremely mysterious. But now it was destroyed in a single strike. This made him realize that the Tower of Endless Tao that Lin Sun presented was absolutely an incredible treasure. Kill! Without hesitation, Lin Sun took out his Yuan killer sword and attacked. Puff! Caught off guard, the phantom of the god of barbarians only managed to dodge, but his body was still struck by the sword chi. A bloody sword mark appeared on his waist, and he was almost cut in half. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. How can you be so powerful? The phantom of the god of barbarians was completely panicked. He realized that something was wrong, and he felt threatened. Kill! Lin Sun didn't bother to talk nonsense at all. He manipulated the Yuan killer sword and attacked. Crack! It was a loud noise. The white bone spear in the hand of the phantom of the god of barbarians was cut off by the sharp blade of the Yuan killer sword in a violent collision. At the same time, blood spurted from the mouth and nose of the phantom of the god of barbarians, and his body became dim. Kill! Lin Sun exerted all his strength in one go. The sword edge was like lightning, setting off a monstrous bloody light. It was like a thick river of blood flowing backwards, covering the world. With a roar and a scream, the phantom of the god of barbarians couldn't hold on any longer. His body suddenly exploded, turning into 13 figures that staggered and fell in the void. They were the 13 shaman kings. But at this moment, their faces were pale, and they seemed to be greatly injured. There was unconcealable panic and anger on their faces. This time, they came prepared. They thought that they could easily kill Lin Sun with their secret method. But they never thought that in the end, not only did they destroy 2 sane artifacts, but they also suffered great losses. Go! Without hesitation, they chose to escape. However, how could Lin Sun let them go? With a wave of his sleeve, 720 Taishian sword chi swept out and turned into the great void killing sword formation, sweeping across the sky. Puff! Puff! In the void, the shaman kings were killed one after another. Their bodies turned into bursting flesh and blood and fell from the void. No one was spared. At this moment, the world was silent, and only the thick smell of blood spread. Outside the great swamp of wind and thunder, all the imperial strongmen were in a trance. There was only one thought in their mind. How strong was Child Lin? On the black wind mountain in the distance, the White Bee King and other demons had been frightened, and their faces were pale. Witnessing such an unparalleled battle, no matter how stupid they were, they knew that it was absolutely easy for Lin Sun to kill them. It's your turn. Above the void, Lin Sun moved his eyes and looked at the White Bee King and other demons. His expression was indifferent and calm. Black Robe King, if you don't take action, we will all die because of you today. The White Bee King screamed in horror. Black Robe King, why don't you take action? The other demon kings also screamed in horror. Obviously, at this moment, the Black Robe King had become their only hope. In the distance, Lin Sun glanced around and then fixed his eyes on a closed cave residence on the Black Wind Mountain. Was the Black-Robed King cultivating in it? However, there was no movement in the cave residence. It seems that the Black-Robed King has no intention of helping you. Lin Sun looked calm. With a buzzing sound, the Yuan killer sword, like a bloody rainbow, swept over the void. The sharp edge of the sword was filled with monstrous blood. No, the moment they faced Lin Sun head-on, the White Bee King and others directly collapsed. They couldn't even think of resisting. This man was so horrible that they felt desperate. Cut! Lin Sun didn't hesitate. With a thought, the Yuan killer sword turned into a light and slashed at the Black Bee King. Boom! Right at this moment, a black figure suddenly charged out from the tightly shut abode, and with an unbelievable speed, he blocked the sword. Clang! A terrifying collision sound rang out. The black figure left as quickly as it came, and was forced to take more than 10 steps back from the impact. With each step, a big pit collapsed on the ground. Looking carefully, he was holding a spear in his hand. However, it was broken by Lin Sun's sword. Black Robe King. The White Bee King and other demons were overjoyed and refreshed. The figure was covered in a black robe. It was the Black Robe King. However, his appearance made Lin Sun frown. He vaguely felt that he was familiar. Master, can you let them go this time? The Black Robe King suddenly spoke. However, his words were like a bolt of lightning that struck the White Wasp King and the others, causing them to be dumbfounded. Master? The Black Robe King actually called Lin Sun Master? Lin Sun finally guessed who the other party was. He couldn't help raising his eyebrows. Red Eagle King? In the distance, the Black-Robed King took off the hat covering his head, revealing a pale face. He said with a complicated expression, Master, I didn't expect that we would meet in this way. Lin Sun felt unprepared at this moment. Before, he searched for the trace of the Red Eagle King in the southwest province of the Empire, thinking that he had died. Unexpectedly, the other party appeared in front of him as the Black-Robed King. This was something Lin Sun had never thought of. Not to mention Lin Sun, even the White Bee King and others were dumbfounded. The Black-Robed King, whom they pinned all their hopes on, actually recognized Lin Sun as his master. This change was too great. I didn't expect that there was really a traitor in my Lin family. Lin Sun's expression turned cold. Master, please listen to my explanation. The black-robed king was about to say something when he was interrupted by Lin Sun. Explanation? Well, I'll listen to your explanation after I kill these evil creatures. As he said, he did not hesitate to use the Yuan killer sword and attacked again. Whoosh! The sword Qi was like a divine rainbow, cutting through the void. At this moment, it was no wonder that Lin Sun was angry. When he first returned to the mortal world, when he heard that the Red Eagle King was regarded as a traitor, Lin Sun refused to believe it and thought it was a slander by the Zhou family. But in the end, he found that the Red Eagle King had really become a traitor. How could Lin Sun accept this? The battle broke out again. Lin Sun, who was furious, attacked mercilessly. In a moment, the White Bee King and other demons were all killed. No matter how they wailed and struggled, it was of no use. In the process, the Red Eagle King seemed to be in great pain and struggle. His whole body was trembling, but he gritted his teeth and did not say a word. No one knew how much suffering and pain he was suffering in his heart. Clang! Lin Sun put away the Yuan killer sword and landed on the Black Wind Mountain. He looked at the Red Eagle King coldly and said, "Now, you can explain." The Crimson Eagle King was stunned, and he let out a long sigh after a short while and said, "I was wrong since the beginning. At this point, there's no need to explain any longer. It was my fault for making Master angry, and I have nothing to say. I only hope that Master can give me a swift death." After that, he looked at Lin Sun calmly. Lin Sun sneered, "Do you think I dare not?" He was really angry. He felt like he had been deceived and betrayed. The Red Eagle King was silent. "Trash. I didn't expect that after so many years, I should accept a trash like you as my successor. It's a disgrace to me." Suddenly, a cold and majestic voice sounded under the Black Wind Mountain. The Red Eagle King's face suddenly changed, and he shouted, "Go, Master!" Boom! However, it was too late. With the cold and majestic voice, a terrible and boundless big hand suddenly stretched out from the Black Wind Mountain, covering the sky and covering Lin Sun fiercely. At this moment, Lin Sun had a creepy feeling. "Go!" At this moment, the Red Eagle King roared. He suddenly rushed to the sky, and his whole body burst out with surging light. He rushed to the big hand, looking extremely determined. P.S. Don't forget to subscribe and monthly tickets. Chapter 14:21. The Scarlet Eagle King flew out and blocked in front of the large hand that tore through the air. With Lin Sun's strength, he could choose to dodge immediately, but he didn't expect that at such a dangerous moment, Red Eagle King would come forward without hesitation. "Master, run!" The anxious voice still echoed in the void, but it made Lin Sun's heart feel like it was hit by a giant hammer, and his emotions were in turmoil. Could it be? Did he wrongly blame Red Eagle King? Boom! The big hand covered the sky, and the power was so terrifying. In just a moment, Red Eagle King was slapped away, his bones burst, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. "Run!" Red Eagle King was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He was seriously injured and dying, but he obviously didn't care about it, and only wanted Lin Sun to escape. When he roared, he rushed up again. "Evil disciple!" Under the Black Wind Mountain, the cold and furious voice of the demon ancestor sounded. It seemed that he didn't expect that his last disciple would die for a human. Boom! The big hand that covered the sky became more and more terrifying, and the 5 fingers were like 5 mountains that held up the sky, wrapped in strange and frightening bloody brilliance, pressing down fiercely. The void was chaotic, and the sky was covered, and the light couldn't be seen. "Master, I have never betrayed you." At this moment, Red Eagle King seemed to know that he was going to die, and his expression suddenly became calm. His blood-stained body rushed up without hesitation, but his eyes were looking at Lin Sun in the distance, as if he was saying goodbye. Buzz! At this moment, Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, he appeared in front of Red Eagle King, grabbed his clothes, and threw him out fiercely. And Lin Sun suddenly raised his head, and with a long roar, 1,800 Taishian sword Qi burst out of his body, turning into the Great Destruction prison sword formation. At the same time, in his palm, a blood-stained bronze shield appeared. Master! Red Eagle King in the distance was stunned, and his eyes widened. Boom! In the earth-shaking collision sound, the Great Destruction prison sword formation made a violent explosion and was smashed by the big hand that covered the sky. Lin Sun's body shook, and he coughed up blood, and his face was pale. However, his expression was still firm and resolute, and the light around him roared, as if his whole body was completely burning. Dang! The blood-stained bronze shield made a deafening roar. Although it blocked the horrible power of the big hand, Lin Sun's body suddenly sank from the void, and his body made an unbearable sound of bones rubbing against each other. At this moment, Red Eagle King was in a trance, and his eyes were red. His emotions were surging like a mountain torrent. How could he have thought that Lin Sun would do this? Boom! The power of the big hand was so horrible that Lin Sun was pressed down and smashed on Blackwind Mountain. Then the entire mountain collapsed and exploded. The rocks were crushed into powder. In the process, Lin Sun's skin was cracking inch by inch, and his expression was faintly ferocious. He seemed to be extremely strenuous. Kill! He roared furiously. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and the broken blade swept out. He used the profundities of the star engulfing heaven Tao to contain all of his strength and completely erupted. Impermanence slash. The strongest strike of the 6 slashes of heavenly origin. Bang! Bang! In the next instant, the heavens and the earth were drowned by the terrifying glow of the Tao, and it was peerlessly dazzling. One could only see the lofty and majestic Blackwind Mountain explode into pieces like a piece of paper, while a bottomless chasm was blasted open on the ground. In the nearby area, the earth was cracking, producing a rumbling explosion. Boom! Red Eagle King was swept by the aftermath, and his body was shaken to fly out fiercely. His injury became more and more serious, but he didn't care about it. He struggled to get up and rush there. Master! Master! He rushed to the place of the battle like a madman, regardless of life and death. There, smoke and dust were billowing, and the evil spirit was whistling. There was still sharp and terrible sword chi and palm power in the void. If ordinary practitioners approached, they would be killed in an instant. But Red Eagle King completely ignored it. He rushed in and searched crazily. Finally, he saw Lin Sun at the bottom of a huge gully under the earth. Master! Red Eagle King's heart twitched, and his lips trembled. Lin Sun was lying there, his body cracked and stained with blood. His face was pale and transparent. He looked extremely miserable, as if he had died. Master! The Red Eagle King knelt there. His eyes were red, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. He didn't expect it. He really didn't expect it. Originally, when he was regarded as a traitor by Lin Sun and misunderstood him, Red Eagle King's heart sank to the bottom, and he felt extremely painful and tormented. At that time, he was desperate, so he bravely died, hoping to get Lin Sun's forgiveness with his own death. But he didn't expect that he was saved by Lin Sun. On the contrary, Lin Sun suffered because of this. At this moment, Red Eagle King felt like collapsing and let out a sad whimper. I'm not dead yet. Why are you crying? At this moment, Lin Sun, who was lying on the ground, opened his eyes and said in a hoarse voice. Red Eagle King was stiff all over. He rubbed his eyes fiercely as if he couldn't believe it. Then he suddenly became ecstatic and said in a trembling voice, I'm not dead. I'm not dead. Lin Sun got up and looked at Red Eagle King's crying appearance. His heart was also emotional, but he said with a smile, well, it's too shameful to be seen by others. Red Eagle King nodded quickly and grinned. I was just a little too excited and couldn't control myself for a while. The next moment, the two rushed out together and appeared between heaven and earth. As far as the eye could see, Blackwind Mountain had already been blown up and disappeared. The surrounding area had been turned into a devastated land, which was shocking. Master, don't worry. It's impossible for the demonic ancestor to make a second attack. He's trapped in the Great Void Prison. After countless years, his power has almost been exhausted. Red Eagle King said. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard an icy cold and ruthless voice resound. Evil disciple, when I get out of here, I will pull out your tendons, peel off your skin, and grind your bones to ashes. There was incomparable anger in the voice. Red Eagle King's expression was cold, and he was silent. At this point, the voice of the demonic ancestor disappeared completely. Obviously, his power was not enough for him to make another attack. Otherwise, he would not have chosen such a weak way of threatening. Lin Sun. In the distance, many figures rushed over, led by Zhao Jingxian. Previously, Lin Sun and the demonic ancestor waved a big hand, which caused such a terrible movement that even the Empire's strongmen, standing outside the great swamp of wind and thunder, felt the boundless chill. However, when Zhao Jingxian saw that Lin Sun was not in trouble at this time, she was completely relieved, and her whole body felt relieved. He won? Zhao Jingxian asked. Lin Sun smiled slightly and nodded gently. Suddenly, the Empire's strongmen who followed closely were all shocked. On this day, Lin Sun alone killed a group of monster kings, killed 13 shaman kings, and flattened the great swamp of wind and thunder. So many monster kings are all dead? When the news came out, the world was shocked. Impossible. In this world, except for the sage, who can suppress a group of monster kings? Those monster forces were all shocked and didn't believe it. But whether they believed it or not, Lin Sun was standing there. Someone recorded the scenes in the great swamp of wind and thunder with a jade slip, and the news spread throughout the Empire at the fastest speed. Lin Sun first killed 16 monster kings, and then killed the phantom of barbarian god formed by 13 monster kings. Lin Sun's bright figure like the sun was like a brand, shocking and remembered by the world. There was no doubt that this battle was destined to be the most brilliant scene in the Empire today, and it would be recorded in the history books forever. The huge empire was boiling because of this. Great. Child Lin is unparalleled in the world. That's how a husband should be. Great. Lin family has a leader, and he can support the empire. If you marry someone, you should marry Child Lin. He is a real hero, a real man. Countless cheers and uproars resounded in different areas of the empire, venting the admiration and joy in their hearts. Even some women became Lin Sun's fanatical fans and made some more outrageous moves. The reason was that the empire had been suppressed by the monster forces for too long these years. Today, they finally vented their anger, so they were naturally happy. Some people even suggested that Lin Sun should be awarded the title of the first man in the king's territory of the empire. In the world, Child Lin is the most respected person. Don't you see that both the monster kings and the shaman kings are vulnerable in front of Child Lin? These heated discussions continued. With the end of this battle, the great monster disaster in the empire had been reduced to a nominal existence, because almost all the once arrogant monster kings had been killed by Lin Sun. The remaining demonic beast forces were no longer a threat. In the following period of time, the soldiers of the empire struck the iron while it was hot and began to besiege the monster forces in the empire with the momentum of sweeping away the clouds. At the same time, the atmosphere in the 9 branches of voodoo barbarians was gloomy. When they learned that the 13 shaman kings were killed, those high-level voodoo barbarians were dumbfounded as if they were struck by lightning. They were betting that Lin Sun would die. But the result was that Lin Sun alone won a great victory. Defeated, Lin Sun's strength is far beyond our expectation. I'm afraid that no one can control him except for the saint. It's over. How can our voodoo barbarian army invade the empire in the future? In the camp of voodoo barbarians, the high-level voodoo barbarians were in a panic. Everyone knew that with Lin Sun in the empire, it was almost impossible to attack the empire in the future. Damn it! Even Thunder Wizard King, who had the highest status, had nowhere to vent his anger at the moment. His old face was terrible. What should we do? The expressions of other big shots changed constantly. Withdraw. After a long silence, Thunder Wizard King spat out 3 words in a hoarse voice. At that moment, he seemed to have aged countless years. Lin Sun disturbed the world and thwarted their attack plan, which was something that no one could have expected. Lin Sun overturned the world with one hand. On this day, the 9 branches of voodoo barbarians withdrew from the major border areas of the empire, which caused a sensation in the empire again and attracted the attention of the world. P.S. The 8th update is here. Before 9 o'clock in the evening, Goldfish ate first. She had only one meal since the morning. She was starving. Chapter 14:22. The battle in Great Swamp of Wind and Thunder changed the situation of the empire. In the confrontation with the demon beasts, the empire seemed to be in an absolute advantage. At this time, everyone knew that the demon beasts were doomed to fall apart. Someone made statistics. It was less than 3 months from Lin Sun's appearance in the Forbidden City to killing all the demon kings in the world. However, the turbulent situation of the empire was changed by him alone. It could be said that he turned the world upside down with one hand. When the news that the 9 branches of voodoo barbarians withdrew came out in the empire, the already boiling empire became more and more sensational. As soon as the internal troubles were solved, the external troubles also disappeared. This was an unexpected surprise for the empire. Everyone knew who gave all this to them. Lin Sun, Lin Sun, Lin Sun. This name was like a legend that spread throughout the entire empire. Countless cultivators and commoners firmly remembered this name. A single person had turned the situation around and rescued the empire from its abyss of suffering. Such a magnificent feat was sufficient to leave his name in history and be remembered by the thousands of future generations. When the outside world was in an uproar, Lin Sun had returned to Heart-Cleansing Peak. It took him half a month to recover from his injuries. This made him shocked, because he learned from Red Eagle King that the demonic ancestor was trapped in the Great Void Prison and his power was on the verge of exhaustion. But even so, the power of his palm was still enough to hurt him. It could be imagined how terrible the cultivation of the demonic ancestor was in his heyday. Master! On the top of the mountain, the clouds were misty and the green pines were like umbrellas. When Lin Sun was silently meditating on Taishan Sword Sutra, Red Eagle King came to greet him. What's wrong? Lin Sun raised his eyes and asked. He had learned the identity of Red Eagle King and the ins and outs of betrayal. It turned out that Red Eagle King had been set a strange, forbidden spell by the demonic ancestor when he was cultivating, so he gained the trust of the demonic ancestor. However, Red Eagle King had always been unwilling to be controlled by the demonic ancestor. After being defeated by Lin Sun, Red Eagle King chose Lin Sun as his master. He intended to take this opportunity to get rid of the constraints of the demonic ancestor. He thought that the more profound his cultivation was, the more hope he had to break the power of the forbidden spell in his body. But in the end, he found that he thought too simple. As his cultivation deepened, the power of the forbidden spell became more and more terrifying. After Lin Sun left, the Red Eagle King had no choice but to serve the forefather of demonic beasts and became known as the Black-Robed King. However, he had never done anything detrimental to the empire in all these years. Originally, the Scarlet Eagle King thought that if he could become a martial sage, he would definitely have a chance to break the curse power in his body. However, the development of the situation was already completely out of his control. After understanding these reasons, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh, knowing that he had misunderstood the Red Eagle King. Thinking about it, it made sense. If the Scarlet Eagle King had betrayed the empire, how could he not have done anything detrimental to the empire in the past 10 years? The power of the forbidden spell has been greatly reduced. The Red Eagle King said happily. Lin Sun could not help but let out a sigh of relief and said, "That's good." After returning to Heart-Cleansing Peak, he personally investigated the strange forbidden spell power in Red Eagle King's body. Even he was helpless, because this forbidden curse was planted in the Crimson Eagle King's divine soul. However, this big problem was effectively solved by Little Silver. The latter was a descendant of the spirit-eating insects and had set foot on the path of immortality. What he was best at was the secret method of divine soul. At this moment, Lin Sun was gratified to know that Little Silver's method was effective. When the power of the forbidden spell is completely removed, you can stay on heart-cleansing peak to practice. Lin Sun urged. The Red Eagle King nodded. Today, no one on heart-cleansing peak knew that the Red Eagle King was the Black-Robed King. Lin Sun did not intend to tell this secret, so as not to cause some unnecessary discussions. Before long, Lin Zhong also came, bringing some news about the recent events in the Empire. Lin Sun was also refreshed when he learned a little about it. In short, the most difficult internal problems of the Empire had been completely solved. The demon forces had been almost destroyed. Even if there were some survivors, they could no longer pose a threat to the Empire. At the same time, the forces of the 9 branches of voodoo barbarians had retreated from the border of the Empire, which meant that the external problems of the Empire had been eliminated. Young Master, many people have come to visit these days. Lin Zhong opened his mouth, but he was interrupted by Lin Sun before he finished. Just tell them that I'm in closed-door training and I won't see anyone. Lin Zhong smiled bitterly, but he still took the order and left. He knew that with his young master's current identity and cultivation, many things in the secular world had long been ignored by him. However, Lin Zhong didn't feel anything wrong. In today's empire, Lin Sun's status was extremely high and special. Even those princes, generals, and ministers had to be courteous and respectful to him. Now, only some old friends had the opportunity to see Lin Sun. As for others, don't think about it. In fact, Lin Sun did intend to start closed-door training to prepare for the breakthrough. Destiny. Now I've learned about my origin. In the end, it's all because of the heaven accessing place. Lin Sun was lost in thought. On the same day, he made a decision to enter the heaven accessing place again. On the same day, Zhao Jingxian came to Heart Cleansing Peak, but he was a little disappointed when he heard that Lin Sun had been in closed-door training. Tell Lin Sun that I have collected some news he needs. When he comes out, let him go to the Imperial Palace. Zhao Jingxian told Lin Zhong before leaving. Lin Zhong agreed without hesitation. After returning to the Imperial Palace, Zhao Jingxian looked at a message in her hand with uncertain expression. What happened that year that made my father and mother put down everything in their hands and hurried to the bloodthirsty battlefield? Well, I'll make a decision when Lin Sun comes out. After a long time, she sighed softly. Now, the Empire's internal and external troubles had been effectively solved. The world was peaceful, and the heavy burden on Zhao Jingshuan's shoulders had become a lot lighter. But now she was a little worried about her parents. What happened in the bloodthirsty battlefield? Your Highness, how should the 9th prince and concubine Meng be settled? Suddenly, a servant came to see her and asked in a low voice. A cold light flashed in Zhao Jingshuan's clear eyes. She said calmly, "Isn't the 3rd prince guarding the emperor's mausoleum? He must be lonely. Let them accompany him." The servant nodded. "Remember, without my order, they are not allowed to step out of the emperor's mausoleum, and no one is allowed to contact them," Zhao Jingxian ordered. "Yes." The servant hurriedly took the order and left. Zhao Jingxian rubbed her eyebrows and pondered. Not long ago, Qi Lingxiao, the patriarch of Qi family, asked to see her and reported Zhao Jingzhen and his mother Meng Rong. It turned out that the mother and son hid in Qi family after returning to the mortal world. Ironically, they tried to use the power of Qi family to harm Lin family of Heart Cleansing Peak, but they were directly detained by Qi Lingxiao. Now, the mother and son had been detained in the forbidden area of the Imperial Palace. Originally, Zhao Jingxian planned to let Lin Sun solve this matter. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was practicing in seclusion today. "Everything is waiting for you to come out," Zhao Jingxian murmured in her heart. Heaven accessing place. Green cloud avenue stretched straight across the nothingness. At the end of the avenue, the ancient and towering gate to heaven stood tall and boundless. Entering here again, Lin Sun's mood was completely different, because he already knew that heaven accessing place was left to him by his mother, Luo Qingxuan. However, there was only one doubt in Lin Sun's mind. Who was the mysterious woman? Senior. At the end of Green Cloud Avenue, Lin Sun saw the mysterious woman again. She had been sitting cross-legged under the closed gate to heaven. What do you want to know? The mysterious woman opened her eyes as if she had expected Lin Sun would come. Who on earth are you? Lin Sun took a deep breath and asked seriously. I'm just a lonely ghost. You can also regard me as a gatekeeper. The mysterious woman said casually. Do you know Luo Qingxuan? Lin Sun asked. The mysterious woman was silent for a moment and said, I know. A long time ago, Lu Boya came here and told me something. Lin Sun was shocked. With a trace of hope in his eyes, he asked, Can I know? In those years, Lu Boya also tried to break through. Unfortunately, he failed to open this door. When he left, he told me that one day, someone would open this door. That person was the descendant of Luo Qingxuan. That is you. The mysterious woman said casually. Later, he left. That's all. Lin Sun was a little disappointed. The mysterious woman said, I'm just a gatekeeper. Although I traveled this world a long time ago and saw all kinds of people and things, I don't know what you want to know. Lin Sun smiled bitterly and said, Senior, do you know what secrets are hidden in this heaven-accessing place? He was really curious. At that time, his mother, Luo Qingxuan, was hunted down and fell to this world from the other side of the starry sky. All of this happened because of this heaven-accessing place. How could he not be curious? The mysterious woman did not answer directly, but said, You need to open this door, see and understand what is behind it. Speaking of this, she looked up at Lin Sun and said, You have passed through 6 of the 9 levels of Green Cloud Avenue. Last time in the domain of death, I have already said that you have the opportunity to open this door. Lin Sun suddenly looked up at the gate to heaven in the distance and said, Can I open this door now? The mysterious woman said, With your strength, you can already pass through the last 3 levels. Only when you do this, you are qualified to open this door. After a pause, she continued, However, it is not so easy to open this door. Lu Boya was already in the Great Sage realm, but he failed when he tried to open this door. Lin Sun was stunned and frowned. Senior, do you mean that even a great sage may not be able to open this door? The mysterious woman shook her head. No, it doesn't matter how high the realm is. What matters is whether you can get the approval of this door. Approval? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. P.S. The 9th update is here. The 10th update should be finished before 10:30. Brothers who still have tickets, it's time to smash them. Chapter 1423. Yes, I do. The mysterious woman said. Since the day I became the gatekeeper, countless years have passed, but until now, I have only seen one person who almost opened the door. When she spoke up to hear, the mysterious woman's eyes were suffused with a wisp of recollection. That was a very, very long time ago. I remember that person was a sword cultivator. He possessed a heroic bearing and unyielding character, and he successively broke through the 9 levels of the Ascencio path while at the Extinction Monarch realm. I have to say that person's talent and talent were by no means inferior to yours. When he pushed the door to heaven roared constantly, and the real sound of the Great Way came. At that time, I thought that he was very likely to step into this door, but when he just opened a gap, he coughed up blood and stopped. When he left, he just said, I can't force it. Then he shook his head and left. Speaking of this, the mysterious woman sighed softly. That person is really a pity. Lin Sun couldn't help being moved and asked, Who is he? Xian Shanshan. The mysterious woman said a name. He doesn't belong to this world, nor does he belong to this world. According to the calculation of time, he is almost equivalent to a figure in this world in primitive times. Xian Shanshan. It was an extremely strange name for Lin Sun. When he thought that this was a figure who was very likely to be born in primitive times and didn't belong to this world, Lin Sun only felt that it was too far away from him. You should remember this surname. When you go to the Starry Sky ancient path in the future, you may meet the descendants of this clan. It's mysterious and mysterious. Not any clan dares to call this surname. The mysterious woman suddenly said. Lin Sun was stunned and nodded to show that he understood. Now, do you want a breakthrough? The mysterious woman asked. Okay, Lin Sun nodded. He still remembered that when he was in the West Hung territory of the ancient Desolation territory, he passed through the 6th level of Green Cloud Path and obtained the second half of Nature Insight and Spirit Devour Scripture and Tianyuan Saber Play. At that time, the mysterious woman once said that when he set foot in King of Extinction Realm, he could directly break through the last 3 levels. The 3 levels were Burning Realm, Breaking Way, and Seeing Opportunity. If he hadn't been in the domain of Extinction Realm when he set foot in King of Extinction Realm, he would have had the opportunity to break through many years ago. But now it was not too late. The 6th stage is called the Infernal Realm. It burns one's essence, energy, and spirit. With the mysterious woman's voice, a strange and magnificent fiery rain suddenly appeared on the green cloud path, covering Lin Sun's whole body. In the next moment, he felt his vision blur, and he appeared in a world of flames. As far as the eye could see, there were surging flames everywhere. There were flames of indigo, crimson red, golden yellow, dark blue, silver white. They were magnificent and dazzling. Rumble. As soon as Lin Sun's figure appeared, the rolling flame suddenly turned into a series of godlike phantoms. Each of them was blazing with terrible power. These are the divine flame essences. There are a total of 108 of them. Once you kill them, you'll pass the trial. The shorter the time, the greater the reward. The mysterious woman's voice sounded faintly. Lin Sun nodded. The next moment, his eyes were as cold as lightning, and the chi around him was boiling. He attacked without hesitation. Whoosh! With his current combat power of the 7th retribution of Longevity Realm, as soon as he rushed out, he smashed a phantom of a god with a punch, which turned into a rain of light all over the sky. But a strange scene appeared. The rain of light did not disappear. Instead, it gathered together again and restored to its original state. Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. Only then did he realize that this test was not as simple as he thought. Boom! He stepped forward and hit the phantom of a god again. In a flash, the latter was smashed again, but soon it recovered to its original state. It was as if it was immortal. But Lin Sun still noticed that after experiencing the process of being killed twice, the opponent's breath had weakened a little. Suddenly, Lin Sun was relieved. Without hesitation, he rushed into the dense phantoms of gods and fought with all his strength. Relatively speaking, the power of these figures was not at the same level as Lin Sun at all, so the threat posed by them was not great. In just 10 minutes, the phantoms of gods in the world of flames had disappeared. There was no possibility of resurrection except for the rain of fire all over the sky. The next moment, Lin Sun had appeared on the Green Cloud Avenue, and the mysterious woman said, "You have passed the test. Do you want to continue?" Lin Sun nodded. The 8th test is called Tao Breaking, which tests the mastery of the Great Way. With a voice, Lin Sun appeared in the room. There was only one desk in the room, on which a huge piece of white paper was spread with a brush on one side. A piece of paper is like a world of its own. Draw with the brush and use the profundities of the Grand Tao as ink. If you're able to contain a world of the Grand Tao within the piece of paper and attain a state of ceaseless growth and renewal, then you'll have passed the test. Hearing this, Lin Sun stepped forward and fell into meditation. This test seemed simple, but it was not simple at all. The Great Way was like the sky. Only by diligently pursuing it could practitioners control the power of the Great Way and use it in their hearts. Like this painting, in fact, it was necessary to use one's own understanding and control of the Great Way in the way of painting. If one's understanding of the Great Way was too low, it was impossible to reach the state of a painting containing a world endless cycle. After a long silence, Lin Sun picked up the brush and waved it on a blank piece of paper. Buzz! In his heart, all kinds of Great Way emerged like a tide and poured into the tip of the brush. Gradually, a huge abyss appeared on the white paper. Then, the abyss showed black and white colors and gradually rotated. Then, the power of water and fire began to fly along the whirlpool, circulating with each other, reflecting the scene of water and fire blending later At the bottom of the abyss, the real dragon roared. Outside the abyss, the breath of immortality circulated and the charm of eternity emerged as time went by. Lin Sun was completely immersed in painting. His understanding of the power of the Great Way emerged under the tip of the brush. As for the blank piece of paper, it gradually changed. It was like the embryonic form of a world, and it constantly gave birth to many wonderful changes. In the end, when Lin Sun put down the brush, with a strange roar, the white paper disappeared completely. What appeared in front of Lin Sun was a huge and magnificent world. This world, like a big abyss, had the atmosphere of devouring and suppressing all things, and had the charm of immortality and eternity. In Lin Sun's heart, a kind of enlightenment emerged. The Great Way was the origin of the world. The ultimate pursuit of practitioners was hidden in the mystery of the world's operation. If there was a universe in one's heart, one could control it. One day, if one could build a world by one's own strength, deduce the order of the cycle, and change all things, what was the difference between him and the supreme creator in the legend? Thinking of this, Lin Sun's heart trembled, as if he had pierced through a piece of window paper and saw an extremely lofty realm on the road of cultivation. In this realm, the power mastered was not to turn the rotten into the magical, but to create and destroy. Between existence and non-existence, life and death could be created. This was the so-called making something out of nothing. Lin Sun didn't know that few people could reach this realm, even in the Emperor realm. But now he saw it. Although he hadn't reached it, he already knew that he had achieved one of his goals. As long as he persevered, he would reach it one day. Understanding this was extremely crucial. At least, he wouldn't go astray or get lost on the road of cultivation in the future. You've succeeded. When the mysterious woman's voice sounded, Lin Sun returned to the green cloud peak again, but his state of mind had become different. I didn't expect that you would realize it so soon. The mysterious woman was a little surprised, with a rare emotional fluctuation. Obviously, she noticed the change of Lin Sun's state of mind after painting, and knew that he saw the legendary realm of making something out of nothing. Thank you, Senior. Lin Sun cupped his hands. Don't thank me. This is what you realized by yourself. The mysterious woman shook her head and then said, Sit quietly for a while and bear in mind what you've learned before. It's okay to continue. Lin Sun nodded and sat cross-legged. He did have a lot of insights in his mind, but he needed time to refine them and turn them into his own. The mysterious woman looked at him from a distance, but her heart couldn't calm down. She saw a painting made by Lin Sun before, which was not so amazing. But Lin Sun could realize the realm that only existed in the legend when he was painting, which surprised her quite a lot. Maybe he can really open this door? The mysterious woman's mood fluctuated, and she was lost in thought. She clearly remembered that even Xin Shangchen didn't get a glimpse of that realm in the 8th test like Lin Sun did. In other words, Lin Sun was the first one to do this since she became the gatekeeper. It was too unusual. At least, the mysterious woman couldn't calm down at this time. Making something out of nothing, creating life and death between something and nothing. This realm was like a taboo. Several hours later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation, with a clear mind and a clear mind. You can start. He got up from the ground, exhaled a long breath, and said, The 9th test is called Seeing Yourself. Once you enter it, you will experience a reincarnation with another identity. In that reincarnation, you're no longer yourself. If you want to pass the test, you need to see yourself in the reincarnation. The mysterious woman's words seemed a little obscure, which made Lin Sun frown slightly. After a while, he nodded and said, I see. The mysterious woman didn't say anything more. On the green cloud path, a magnificent and dreamy glow appeared, enveloping Lin Sun's whole body. The next moment, he disappeared. At the same time, a trace of curiosity appeared on the mysterious woman's face. I'd like to see how you'll perform if you survive in a different way in the cycle of reincarnation. Will you really be able to maintain a bit of emptiness in your mind and see yourself? P.S. The 10th update. The outbreak plan was successfully completed. I'm exhausted, but it's done after all. Cool. If you feel cool, please be sure to subscribe and have a monthly ticket to support it. Without saying much, the goldfish lay down first, feeling very sleepy. Chapter 1424. Who am I? In the mansion of Lin family, the #1 cultivation family in Yujing City, Lin Sun, the 13-year-old young master of Lin family, was sitting by the pond in a daze as usual. Young master is possessed again. In the distance, some servants whispered to each other and didn't seem to be surprised. 13 years ago, there was a strange phenomenon in the sky, and a purple gas fell on the mansion of Lin family. It was also on that day that Lin Sun, the young master of Lin family, was born. As a young master born with the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth, he became a celebrity in Yujing City from the moment he was born. In the family, they doted on this young master even more, believing that he would definitely become an indomitable big shot in the future. The most important thing was that Lin Sun was the only son among the 7 sons and daughters of the patriarch. In other words, the great foundation of Lin family would be inherited by Lin Sun in the future. His identity was special and honorable, so it went without saying. But to everyone's surprise, Lin Sun had an extremely weird character. He didn't want to be close to anyone, including his parents, since he was a child. What worried everyone in Lin family the most was that Lin Sun was not interested in anything and often liked to be alone in a daze. If that was the case, it would be fine. But in these years, Lin Sun often said some strange things, such as, "I'm not Lin Sun. You must have mistaken me for someone else. One day I'll know who I am. Yes, I don't know who I am, but I know that I'm definitely not me." Similar words made Lin Sun an unconventional child and also gave his parents a headache. Nowadays, in the whole Yujing City, whenever the young master of Lin family was mentioned, it would lead to laughter. He's a fool. Yes, a fool born with the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth. Ha ha. This was the evaluation of Lin Sun by many people in Yujing City, and it also became a joke. As a young boy, he rejected contact with anyone since he was a child and liked to talk nonsense. If he wasn't a fool, what was he? Lin family was the #1 cultivation family in Yujing City, and the only son of the head of the family was a fool. It was hard for him not to attract attention. Of course, within the Lin family, even though there were many people who suspected that the young master was a naturally simple-minded person, no one dared to say it out loud. In the past few years, in order to let the young master return to normal, or to say, in order to cure his stupidity, the Lin family had used all kinds of methods. For example, searching for elixirs and medicines, or inviting some enlightened monks to perform their rituals. Money flowed like water, and it was unknown how much he had spent. But it was useless. The young master was still very strange, and the older he grew, the more antisocial he became. He was not interested in anything. He liked to do one thing every day, and that was to be in a daze. His parents were so worried that their hair had turned white. They even began to wonder if their son was really born with a defect, a simpleton, or if there was something wrong with his brain. Fortunately, Lin Sun was their own flesh and blood after all. Although he had been a little silly these years, he had not been neglected. On the contrary, perhaps out of pity, everyone in the Lin family took great care of this young master. Even a fool hoped that he could grow up peacefully. Of course, everyone knew that the right to be the successor of the Lin family was destined to be lost to this young master. When Lin Sun was 15 years old, a big event happened. The Wang family of Yujing City, which had been engaged to Lin family since childhood, came in person and asked to break off the engagement. According to Wang Tianxing, the head of the Wang family, he had been waiting for 15 years, but Lin Sun's stupidity was still not cured. He could not wait any longer. In short, Wang Tianxing's daughter could not marry a fool. Although the head of the Lin family was not happy, he expressed his understanding and generously agreed to break off the engagement. Lin Sun's mother was extremely angry about it. She thought that although her son was a little eccentric, he had no bad habits. This move of the Wang family was obviously burning the bridge after crossing the river. It was too impolite. In this regard, All the members of the Lin family sighed and could not say anything. "You're Lin's son, right? My name is Wang Zilwan. We should have gotten married this year, but I'm sorry, I won't marry a fool." On the day of breaking off the engagement, a beautiful girl of 13 or 14 years old appeared in the courtyard where Lin's son lived. The girl was very beautiful. She had snow-white skin, an oval face, big eyes, and a slender figure. Although she was still young, she was already slim and graceful. However, she was very strong and proud. When she confirmed that Lin's son was the famous fool in Yujing City, she did not hesitate to say what was in her mind. To her surprise, Lin's son did not respond at all. He sat in front of the pond, staring at the green water in a daze. It seemed that in his eyes, the water in the pond was more beautiful than the girl beside him. "Did you hear what I said?" Wang Zilwan was very angry. She stared at Lin's son. "Don't think that I can't do anything to you if you don't speak. I tell you clearly that even if I have to marry someone, I will marry the most outstanding person in the world." Lin's son was still in a daze. He did not even move or blink his eyelids. This made Wang Zilwan even angrier. She was so angry that her pretty face turned red and she gritted her teeth. She wanted to rush up and kick this fool who dared to ignore her to death. But soon, she was not angry anymore. She seemed to have thought it through and laughed at herself. "He is indeed a fool. Why should I be angry with a fool?" After saying that, Wang Zilwan left. The maidservant Xiao Xiao, who had been serving Lin's son, couldn't help but be angry when she saw this. The young master was too lazy to care about the annulment of the engagement. But this Wang Zilwan was too hateful. She even came to laugh at the young master. This was too much. "Young master, aren't you angry?" Xiao Xiao couldn't help but ask. Beside the pond, under the banyan tree, the young man looked at the green water in a daze, as if he did not hear anything at all. This made Xiao Xiao feel disappointed. For a man, it was such a shameful thing to have his engagement annulled. But the young master did not react at all. "Alas, young master, is he really stupid?" Xiao Xiao sighed her heart. She lamented his misfortune and was angry at his incompetence. "Why should I be angry? Is she worth it?" At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in Xiao Xiao's ears. She was shocked and looked up. She didn't know when her young master had stood up. The young man was wearing a white robe, which gave him a kind of indifferent and otherworldly style. "Not worth it." As if answering his own question, the young man shook his head and walked towards his own residence. So young master heard it. Xiao Xiao was very surprised. She looked at the back of the young man that was gradually getting further and further away, and she suddenly thought that besides being in a daze, the young master seemed to have never done anything related to being stupid all these years. It wasn't long before the news spread in Yujing City that the eldest young miss of the Wang clan, Wang Zilwan, had married Huangfu Xiaoyu, who was known as the #1 young master of Yujing City. The Huangfu clan was also a clan of cultivators. Although its power was inferior to the Lin clan, its resources couldn't be underestimated. Especially Huangfu Xiaoyu. He had been admitted into the #1 sect in the world, the Azure Cloud sect, to cultivate last year, and he was even a direct disciple of the inner court. Comparatively speaking, Huangfu Xiaoyu was like a proud son of heaven in the eyes of others. Therefore, the union of Wang Zilwan and Huangfu Xiaoyu instantly became a beautiful topic in Yujing City. As for Lin's son, who had his engagement annulled, he was still a laughingstock. Moreover, the annulment of his engagement had caused countless people to laugh. A dignified, direct descendant of the Lin clan, a famous person born along with the phenomenon of the heavens and the earth, was still an idiot 16 years later. Moreover, he was an idiot that even women despised, so it was naturally easy to be ridiculed. When Lin's son was 19 years old, the Lin clan suffered a great change. The head of the Lin clan was seriously injured by the headmaster of the Azure Cloud sect because he offended the Azure Cloud sect when fighting for a mineral deposit. At the same time, the industries under the Lin clan were comprehensively suppressed by the Azure Cloud sect. From then on, the power of the Lin clan plummeted and couldn't recover. The glory of the past was blown away by the wind and rain. The Wang clan, where Wang Zilwan belonged, received the support of the Azure Cloud sect and became the #1 cultivation force in Yujing City. At a party, Wang Tianxing, the head of the Wang clan, said proudly, "The wisest decision I made in my life was to break off the engagement of my daughter Zilwan." This sentence soon spread throughout the entire Jade capital city. The idiot Lin Sun became a joke in the city again because of this. When Lin Sun was 26 years old, the Lin clan had declined to the point of being in a precarious situation. The reason was that the head of the Lin clan died of illness 2 years ago. The Lin clan, which had lost its pillar, scattered like monkeys when the tree fell. Lin Sun was still the young master of the Lin clan, but his life had become so poor that he couldn't even afford the maidservants around him. The great Lin clan had completely declined. It didn't take long for Lin's mother to pass away due to depression. Lin Sun's situation became worse from then on. Although Lin's parents passed away, no one was willing to raise a fool in the Lin clan, so Lin Sun had to support himself. However, even so, Lin Sun didn't change his habit of being in a daze. No matter how poor his life was and how difficult his situation was, he still seemed to be unaware of it. He was always in a daze. Get out of here. From now on, the Lin clan doesn't need a fool like you. All these years, because of you, we will be laughed at when we go out. They say we're the relatives of a fool. We can't even raise our heads. On this day, a group of people rushed into the residence of the Lin clan. They were all Lin Sun's cousins, but they looked at Lin Sun with disgust. Remember, you're not allowed to call yourself a descendant of the Lin clan in the future. That is to say, you don't deserve the surname Lin anymore. Also on this day, the news that the fool Lin Sun was expelled from the Lin clan spread in the city, causing a burst of hissing. So many years had passed. The fool who was born with the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth, from a young master who was doted on by all, had fallen to the point where he was banished by his own clan and could only live on the streets. How could people not sigh? Wang Zilwan, who was once engaged to him, was now a noblewoman that many people could only look up to. Because of her husband Huang Fu Xiaoyu, the Wang clan behind her benefited from the light. The power of the Wang clan became more and more powerful. It steadily occupied the position of the first clan in Yujing City and enjoyed boundless glory. It was snowing heavily. For more than 20 years, Lin Sun, who had been regarded as a fool, walked alone on the street. He wore thin clothes in the winter, and his body was covered with snow. He was all alone. When seeing this scene, the mysterious woman, as an outsider, became more and more curious. Could Lin Sun see himself in such a heavy blow? P.S. It seems that because of yesterday's outburst, I can't find a state of mind when I write today. My thoughts are very sluggish. If I smooth out the plot tonight, I will make up tomorrow. Chapter 1425. This snowfall was exceptionally heavy. The clouds were wrapped in white, and Jade capital city was covered in white. On the street, Lin Sun walked alone with dull eyes. He just walked aimlessly, covered with snow, and his black hair was dyed with frost. A hound came out and wagged its tail at Lin Sun triumphantly. It was just a dog, but it was dressed in a well-tailored suit and even had a string of purple gold bells tied around its neck. Grumble, Lin Sun's stomach growled. He turned his eyes and glanced at the dog. The dog shivered all over, as if it had been greatly frightened. It ran away in a panic with its tail between its legs. This scene caused one to be unable to help but think of the phrase panicking like a stray dog. Lin Sun withdrew his eyes, thinking that he hadn't tasted dog meat for a long time. Wang Kai, Wang Kai. In the distance, a group of servants anxiously chased the hound that ran away in a panic. Beggar, stop right there. A pretty but bossy maid blocked Lin Sun's way angrily. She pointed at Lin Sun's nose and scolded him. What did you do to scare my lady's dog? Hey, are you the young master? The scolding stopped abruptly. The maid recognized Lin Sun and opened her eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe it. Lin Sun also recognized that the woman in front of him was Xiao Chao, the maid who served him since he was very young. However, he hadn't seen her for many years after the Lin family was ruined. It seemed that she lived a good life after leaving the Lin family. Although she still looked like a maid, she was neatly dressed in brocade clothes and marten fur coat, exuding a rich aura. It's you, Xiao Xiao. Lin Sun felt it necessary to say hello to her. After all, Xiao Xiao was an acquaintance in the past. Don't call me Xiao Xiao. Suddenly, the maid's face darkened, and she sneered. Do you still think you are the young master of the Lin family? Look at you now. You're even worse than a dog. How dare you try to get close to me? Let me tell you, if you dare to tell others that I am your maid, I will be the first to punish you. She seemed very agitated and anxious to disassociate herself from Lin Sun. Lin Sun looked at her for a moment and walked forward without saying anything. From beginning to end, he didn't have any emotional fluctuations, which surprised Xiao Xiao. After the surprise, she was furious. She rushed forward again and said, Did you hear what I said? You really are a fool. After living for so many years, you are worse than a dog. Your parents are dead, the Lin family is ruined, and even you have been expelled from the Lin family. Who knows? One day, you will freeze to death in the cold wind and snow, and no one will collect your corpse. Lin Sun was still moving forward as if he hadn't heard it. This made Xiao Xiao even angrier. She gritted her teeth and said, You really are an idiot. No wonder the madam chose to break off the engagement back then. Who would be willing to marry an idiot like you? Lin Sun stopped and said, Madam. Xiao Xiao acted as if she had just won a battle. Her eyes were full of pride and disdain as she said, You still remember the madam? Yes, my wife is Wang Zilwan. Who in Jade Capital City did not know of Wang Zilwan's name? And Huang Fu Xiaoyu, Wang Zilwan's husband, was one of the few big shots. It was said that Huang Fu Xiaoyu had been selected as the successor of the headmaster of Green Cloud Sect. Sooner or later, he would take charge of Green Cloud Sect. How is it? Do you feel very uncomfortable now? Very angry? Xiao Xiao sneered. Unfortunately, if I were the madam, I would never marry such an idiot like you. I still remember that you asked me at that time. Aren't you angry? Lin Sun frowned as if he was caught in a difficult memory. After a while, he said, At that time, I said she didn't deserve my anger. Xiao Xiao was stunned and said, What about now? Lin Sun said, It's the same now. When he said this, his originally lifeless eyes were like the surface of a lake that had been dispelled by the fog, becoming clear without a trace of impurities. There was an unspeakable unwillingness and powerlessness in Xiao Xiao's heart. Couldn't this fool even feel ridicule, humiliation, and blow? He was really a fool born with the strange phenomena of heaven and earth. If it were any other normal man, he would have been angry and burst out. But looking at him, he didn't even have the slightest reaction. Xiao Xiao had an impulse to go crazy at this moment. She felt that if she talked to this fool one more word, she would be so angry that she would cough up blood. Miss Xiao Xiao, Wang Kai has been found. In the distance, those servants returned happily with the hound in gorgeous clothes in their arms. Xiao Xiao pointed to Lin Sun beside her and gritted her teeth. He scared Wang Kai just now. You know what to do, right? All of a sudden, the servants looked at Lin Sun with unkind eyes. They were eager to take action. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it. But when he saw the fat hound, his stomach growled again. Ow! The hound Wang Kai let out an incomparably shrill bark, as if it had been overly frightened. It suddenly broke free from Wang Kai's grasp and started to run away madly. Everyone was stunned. Xiao Xiao was anxious. What are you waiting for? Go after it. If Wang Kai is lost, don't come back again. Everyone hurried to chase after it. This dog is interesting. Lin Sun laughed. His eyes were clear and clean, like the falling snow, so transparent and pure that it made people's hearts tremble. Xiao Xiao was stunned. If she remembered correctly, it was the first time she saw Lin Sun laugh in all these years. Immediately, she felt a burst of anger. Was a fool's giggle worthy of her attention? Remember what I said. If I dare to hear you mention the relationship between you and me to others, I will kill you first. Xiao Xiao took a deep breath, threw down some harsh words, and then hurriedly left. Lin Sun was stunned. He felt a little strange and regretful. He sighed softly and walked into the vast snowy world. Hey, isn't that the foolish young master of your Lin family? Tut-tut, look at him. He is no different from a beggar. In a restaurant, it was filled with distinguished guests, and the atmosphere was warm. A group of the young, hedonistic young masters of the Jade capital city had gathered together and were chatting merrily. However, when a young man sitting by the window suddenly said that, it immediately caused many people to laugh, and they all turned their gazes to the street outside. There, snow swirled in the air, and a young man in thin clothes walked alone. Snow covered his body, and he was all alone. It's really him. Who could imagine that the guy who was loved by all has fallen to the street now? Ha ha! This fool has been expelled from Lin family now. Alas, Lin family was so glorious in the past, but now it is cold and desolate. Things are really changeable. Everyone sighed. Of course, this was a kind of condescending pity, and there was no lack of gloating. Among the people, there were some juniors of Lin family, but they could only sit in the corner, and no one cared about them. Those young people dared to talk about Lin family unscrupulously, but they didn't dare to get angry. With the passage of time, Lin family was no longer the first force in Yujing City. Damn bastard, why didn't he die? Those juniors of Lin family secretly gritted their teeth, thinking that Lin Sun's appearance had made them lose face. They had nowhere to vent their anger, so they could only vent it on Lin Sun. Everyone, that guy is no longer surnamed Lin. He has nothing to do with us anymore. A junior of Lin family couldn't help saying, ha ha, look, even Lin family doesn't want to recognize that fool. He is really pitiful. There was a burst of laughter in the restaurant. Those juniors of Lin family looked stiff and didn't speak. Alas, this fool is so pitiful. Give him a bone. A junior of Wang family stood out, picked up a chicken bone, and threw it out of the window, which fell at Lin Sun's feet. Fool, eat quickly. Don't starve to death. The junior of Wang family said loudly. All of a sudden, the atmosphere in the restaurant became quiet. This behavior was undoubtedly a humiliation to Lin Sun, which was more severe than slapping his face. But no one said anything, because he was a junior of Wang family. Today, Wang family was the first force in Yujing City with great power and influence, even more powerful than Lin family in the past. The reason was that Wang family had a good son-in-law, Huang Fu Xiaoyu. The junior of Wang family in front of them was called Wang Zilong, the younger brother of Wang Zilwan. If Wang Zilwan hadn't broken off the engagement, Wang Zilong would have had to call Lin Sun brother-in-law. But now, of course, everything was different. Lin Sun was a fool who fell into the street, while Wang Zilong was the first playboy in Yujing City. His brother-in-law was a famous talent, Huang Fu Xiaoyu. Now, Wang Zilong humiliated Lin Sun by throwing away the chicken bone. Although everyone saw it, who dared to say anything? Even those juniors of Lin family didn't say anything. They lowered their heads and drank in silence. But they hated Lin Sun more and more. Why didn't he freeze to death in this heavy snow? On the street, Lin Sun stopped and looked at the chicken bone under his feet. Then, he looked at the restaurant in the distance and the group of playboys who were pointing fingers at him. Then, he bent down to pick up the chicken bone and shook it in the direction of the restaurant, saying, I will pay you back in the future. After that, he put away the chicken bone and gradually disappeared in the distance. Everyone in the restaurant roared with laughter. Some people laughed so hard that they bent over, and tears almost came out of their eyes. Yes, no one expected that in the face of such a humiliating method, the fool Lin Sun actually picked up the chicken bone. Even Wang Zilong was stunned. He was very surprised and muttered, he is really a fucking fool. He still wants to pay me back. Is he going to give me a chicken bone? It's crazy. At the end of his words, he couldn't help laughing. In the restaurant, the laughter became louder and louder. Only those juniors of Lin family became more and more uncomfortable, as if they were sitting on pins and needles. On the same day, the news that the fool of Lin family picked up the chicken bone thrown by Wang Zilong spread like wildfire and became another joke in the city. P.S. As usual, 2 updates in a row. Chapter 1426. Everyone, my elder sister is coming back at dusk today, so I'll take my leave first. Wang Zilong drank a cup of wine before turning around and leaving. Everyone stood up to send him off. The disciples of the Lin clan couldn't help but sigh in their hearts when they saw Wang Zilong's imposing manner. When the Lin clan was powerful, weren't they just as imposing wherever they went? But now, They had finally experienced what it felt like to be left alone in a river that was declining with each passing day. It was dusk. A 300 m long treasure ship crushed the clouds and entered the Yujing city, causing a stir, and all gazes looked towards the Wang clan. Because on this day, Wang Zilwan returned to her parents' home, and accompanying her was Huang Fuxiaoyu, a core disciple of the Azure Cloud sect who was like a proud son of heaven. That night, many great powers in the city paid a visit to the Lin clan with valuable gifts. It was also that night that something happened that reduced the Lin clan to a joke. The reason was that an old man of the Lin clan paid a visit to the Wang clan with valuable gifts, but he was directly refused at the door. At the banquet that night, the patriarch of the Wang clan, Wang Tianxing, whose face was flushed from drinking, asked in surprise in front of all the big shots, "The Lin clan? Which Lin clan? Is there another Lin clan in the Yujing city?" Instantly, all the guests burst into laughter. Wang Zilong took this opportunity to tell them what happened outside the restaurant during the day as a joke. When they learned that the silly young master of the Lin clan actually picked up a chicken bone, all the guests convulsed with laughter. At that time, Wang Zilwan was there as well. After so many years, she didn't expect that the name Lin Sun would be related to a chicken bone. She couldn't help but sneer in her heart. Fortunately, she broke off the engagement that year. If she became the young madam of the Lin clan, it would simply be a nightmare. "Is it that Lin's son?" Huang Fuxiaoyu, who sat beside her, asked calmly. He wore a jade robe, a feather crown on his head, a python dragon belt around his waist. His appearance was handsome and elegant, extremely heroic and extraordinary. "Yes," Wang Zilwan nodded, and a wisp of ridicule appeared on the corners of her mouth. "He's just a fool born with the phenomena of the world. Don't pay attention to him." Huang Fuxiaoyu frowned and pondered deeply for a moment before he said, "Even though you took the initiative to break off the engagement with him all those years ago, it's still inappropriate for others to talk about it." Wang Zilwan was stunned and deeply agreed. "My husband is right. He's a joke, and I don't want to have anything to do with such a joke." Huang Fuxiaoyu said unhurriedly, "Since it's like that, then let this joke vanish forever, and no one will mention it again." Wang Zilwan immediately understood and nodded. "I will settle this matter." Huang Fuxiaoyu acknowledged and didn't speak any further. He was just a fool. If it wasn't for the fact that he had some sort of relationship with Wang Zilwan, he wouldn't have bothered with him at all. He didn't care, but Wang Zilwan did. That night, she went to find Xiao Chao and asked, "Were you Lin Sun's maidservant before?" Xiao Cao's heart trembled, and she hurriedly said, "It's all in the past. I'm a member of Wang family now, and I'll follow Madam wholeheartedly." Wang Zilwan nodded and said, "It's okay if you want to show your loyalty. Take some servants to do one thing tomorrow. I hope you won't hear any news related to Lin Sun in the future. Do you understand what to do?" Xiao Chao stiffened and said in a trembling voice, "Yes." If you didn't want to hear any news about someone, the simplest and most direct way was to make him disappear from the world silently. How could she not understand? "Go ahead. If you do it now, I'll believe in your loyalty," Wang Zilwan said indifferently. Xiao Chao bowed and left. "Let the maidservant who used to serve you personally send you off. Isn't it extremely benevolent?" Wang Zilwan thought slowly. If Xiao Chao hadn't served Lin Sun, Wang Zilwan wouldn't even remember this maidservant who specially raised dogs for her. Yes, Xiao Chao was just a maidservant who raised dogs, and her status was worlds apart from Wang Zilwan's personal maidservant. It was snowing heavily. Outside the city, in a graveyard, Lin Sun stood in front of the two interdependent tombs in silence. Since last night, he had been standing here, motionless like a stone monument covered with snow. Only his eyes were becoming clearer and brighter. "I knew who I was since I was born, but I never dared to believe it. So I've been thinking about who I am. I've been thinking a lot over the years, but I still can't figure it out. As the Buddhists say, true and false are all illusory, like a dream. And I am like a bystander, a passerby, thinking about whether what I see and feel is an illusory dream. Now I understand. Whether it is in a dream or in reality, I am me. I'm not a passerby, nor am I a bystander. Lin Sun talked to himself like a fool talking in his sleep. Then he knelt down in the snow and kowtowed earnestly and devoutly. These years, I've been unfilial. In the end, the scenes of the past came to his mind. When he was a child, his father was ecstatic when he heard him call him father for the first time. At that time, his mother was smiling on one side with gentle eyes. When he was regarded as a hopeless fool, his parents were confused, in pain, angry, and sighing. But no matter what happened to him, they only hoped that he would be safe and sound. They never gave up because he was a fool. Their love for him had always been there, and they spoiled him more than before. Even when his father died, he didn't forget to hold his hand and told him to learn to take care of himself and his mother. Later, his father passed away, and his mother was also depressed. A few years later, she died. Before she passed away, his mother still couldn't forget it. She said that the most painful thing in her life was that she couldn't cure her son's illness. She also said that as long as her son was a fool, he was also her flesh and blood. She couldn't bear to let her son suffer. Unfortunately, she was going to die and couldn't continue to take care of her son. Even when she died, she still opened her eyes as if she didn't die in peace. In front of the grave, Lin Sun knelt on the ground with tears all over his face. He didn't make any sound, but he was extremely sad. It's over. Is he going to be lost in it? In the heaven-accessing place, the mysterious woman frowned. She witnessed everything about Lin Sun in the samsara, but she didn't expect that Lin Sun's so-called understanding was a kind of complete loss of himself. Then, how could he see himself? How could he pass the 9th test of Green Cloud Path? If he couldn't pass, he was destined to lose the qualification to open that door. At this moment, the mysterious woman rarely lost her composure, and an unspeakable emotion arose in her heart. Disappointment? Not really. It was just hard to accept. She watched Lin Sun rise step by step. It was really not easy for him to have today's cultivation. She never thought that Lin Sun would stop before the 9th test of Green Cloud Path. Therefore, she couldn't accept it for a while, and her heart was doomed to be unable to calm down. After a long time, the mysterious woman suddenly froze, and her clear eyes burst out a strange light. No, if he failed, the samsara would end. But now everything was still there. Interesting. Even I have misjudged him, the mysterious woman smiled. She decided to keep watching and see what kind of surprise Lin Sun would give her in the end. It was snowing heavily. Xiao Qiao came to the outside of the city with a group of squires of the Wang family and walked towards the cemetery in the distance. She was very puzzled. Why did this fool go to the cemetery? Did he choose a cemetery for himself in advance because he knew he was going to die soon? Xiao Qiao looked at the sky. The snow was as heavy as goose feathers, and it was freezing cold. She thought to herself, in such a season, even if I don't do anything, I'm afraid that you, a fool, will freeze to death in a few days, right? Not long after, Xiao Qiao walked into the cemetery and saw Lin Sun. To her surprise, Lin Sun knelt on the ground, motionless like a sculpture, as if he was really frozen to death. Are you enlightened before you die? Do you finally understand how sorry you have been to your parents all these years? Xiao Qiao suddenly sneered. Unfortunately, it's too late. Hey, it's really touching that this fool died in this way. Those squires all laughed. There's no such thing as sooner or later in the world. It's only a matter of whether you understand it or not. For me, it's not too late to make up for the guilt of these years. At this moment, a sudden voice sounded. Xiao Qiao almost thought she had heard it wrong. But soon, she realized that she didn't hear it wrong. The figure kneeling in front of the grave like a sculpture slowly stood up under the astonished gaze of the crowd. Crack, crack, the frost on his body broke and fell to the ground. He was still dressed in thin white clothes, and his figure was thin. However, in this world of ice and snow, his tall and straight back did not bend in the slightest. You didn't freeze to death? Xiao Cao's eyes widened. This fool is really cold resistant. It's a miracle that he didn't freeze to death in this dress. Those squires were also surprised and couldn't believe it. Are you here to kill me? Lin Sun looked calm, and the tears on his face had already evaporated. His eyes were extremely clear, as if they could reflect all the things in the world. A servant girl with a group of fierce guards came to the graveyard to look for him on a snowy day. Their intentions were clear. Xiao Qiao was stunned again. She didn't expect that Lin Sun could see through their purpose this time with just a glance. Was this still the fool? Did Wang Zilwan ask you to come? When Lin Sun said this, Xiao Qiao had a feeling of horror. How could this fool know everything? You, Xiao Qiao was about to say something, but Lin Sun said, I just want to ask you, in those years when you were in the Lin family, did the Lin family ever treat you badly? Facing Lin Sun's clear eyes, Xiao Qiao felt for the first time that there was a kind of suffocating and terrifying power oppressing her mind, making her feel like falling into an ice cave. Chapter 14:27. No. Almost instinctively, Xiao Qiao answered subconsciously. Immediately, she was confused. What was wrong with her? How could she be scared by a fool? An unspeakable anger and shame welled up in her heart. She was about to say something, but when she met Lin Sun's clear and deep eyes, she suddenly felt cold, as if she was stared at by a supreme god. As for her, she was just a tiny ant. Have I ever mistreated you? Asked Lin Sun with a calm look, neither sad nor happy. Xiao Qiao shook her head subconsciously. Her mind went blank. What the hell was going on? Damn it, this fool really talks a lot of nonsense. Do you still think Miss Xiao Qiao will let you go for the sake of old friendship? A retainer looked impatient and shouted, Brothers, let's send the young master of Lin family to hell. Clang! He pulled out a bright saber and raised his hand to chop at Lin Sun. Lin Sun glanced at him. With just a glance, an incredible scene happened. The saber that was slashed out shattered inch by inch in the air. Then the retainer's hand, arm, torso, and head all exploded inch by inch. Like an exploding snowman, the flesh and blood fell to the ground before splashing. This strange and inconceivable scene shocked the other subordinates to the point of widening their eyes, and their eyeballs almost popped out. They were terrified silly. Ew. They trembled all over. Their faces changed greatly, and they couldn't even speak clearly. Do you think a fool like me can only be slaughtered at will and don't know how to kill people? Lin Sun glanced at them. Then, the bodies of these strong and extremely fierce retainers of Wang family all burst into pieces. The red blood dyed the white blood scarlet, which was shocking. Xiao Qiao was completely dumbfounded. She lost control of her emotions and screamed, You are not that fool. Who the hell are you? Lin Sun said indifferently, I am me. I have never changed and will never change. Impossible. Xiao Qiao was emotional and her pretty face was pale. If you are that fool, why did you watch Lin family being ruined and your parents dying? You let those people from the Lin family banish you, and even disregarded your shame and dignity to pick up the chicken bones that others threw away? Lin Sun said, Because I didn't understand it at that time, but now I understand. Xiao Qiao looked perplexed. It's that simple. Not simple. Lin Sun sighed and looked at the two tombs. I've thought about this problem for too many years. If I had figured it out earlier, they wouldn't have died. Xiao Qiao froze in place. For the first time, she found that although she had followed Lin Sun for many years, she seemed to have never understood him. Is he really a fool? If I let you die like this, you will definitely be very unwilling. Come with me. As Lin Sun spoke, he walked away. He was dressed in white with his hands clasped behind his back. As he walked in the wind and snow, he no longer looked so down and out. Instead, he gave off an imposing aura that even though the mountains and rivers were vast, they could only bow before his feet. Xiao Qiao chased after him like a ghost. It was as if she dared to disobey or refuse, she would have committed an unforgivable and monstrous crime. Yujing City. When Lin Sun appeared in this city again, he was no longer the same Lin Sun. Or in other words, he should have been like this. Hey, isn't this the fool? It's really rare that he hasn't frozen to death. In the same restaurant, there were still many playboys gathering. Those juniors of Lin family were still sitting in the corner. When hearing the discussion about Lin Sun, those juniors of Lin family were so angry that their faces darkened. Why did this fool appear again? Tut tut. Did he become addicted to the chicken bones he picked up yesterday? Someone sneered. Come on, find me some chicken bones. I'll feed him. Someone rolled up his sleeves and picked up the chicken bones. He wanted to imitate Wang Zilong's behavior yesterday and reward Lin's son with some bones. Others also followed suit. A junior of Lin family couldn't stand it anymore. He suddenly rushed to the window and shouted with a ferocious look, "Lin's son, why don't you go to hell? Don't you think our Lin family is disgraced enough? Get out! Get out! I don't want to see you in the city again." Bang! As soon as he finished his words, he was slapped away by a playboy. The playboy scolded, "Get out of here. Don't ruin our fun." That junior of Lin family fell on his head and was bleeding, but he could only bear it and dare not say a word. In his heart, he hated Lin Sun more and more. Lin Sun saw this scene. He could even see clearly the resentful and extremely aggrieved expressions of those juniors of Lin family. He also saw those hedonistic young masters teasing and playing with him, trying to have fun with him. However, Wang Zilong was missing. This made Lin Sun feel a little regretful, but he didn't think about it anymore because he might see him later. "Lin Sun, come on, catch these bones. If you can bark like a dog, maybe I'll reward you with a glass of wine if I'm in a good mood." A young man in a splendid robe stood at the window and threw out a large number of bones with a smile. Others watched with excitement. Only those juniors of Lin family looked gloomy. They were not angry for Lin Sun, but angry for Lin Sun's disgrace. Those bones flew out. Lin Sun stopped and looked at this scene without any emotion in his eyes. However, those scattered bones suddenly stopped in mid-air, as if they were caught by an invisible hand. Those playboys who were waiting excitedly to see whether Lin Sun would pick up bones or not couldn't help but be stunned. The lively atmosphere also became silent. Whoosh! At this moment, a piece of bone suddenly turned upside down, as if it had turned into a sword, and suddenly cut through the void. Standing at the window, the smile of a young man in a splendid robe, who had thrown out a handful of bones, froze at this moment. A piece of bone penetrated his throat and was embedded in the flesh. Blood gurgled down. The young man in a splendid robe opened his eyes wide and covered his throat. He wanted to say something, but he could only make a sound, a ho-ho. Plop! Immediately, his body softened and he lay on the ground. The other playboys finally realized that something was wrong. Their faces changed dramatically and they jumped in fright. For a moment, the restaurant was in chaos. Whoosh! Whoosh! However, right at that moment, the pieces of bones that had stopped in midair turned around and charged into the restaurant like incomparably sharp swords. Then, each playboy's throat was pierced with a bloody hole. No matter how they tried to dodge or shout, they couldn't. The pieces of bones were all terrifyingly accurate, terrifyingly fast, and terrifyingly fierce. They seemed to be no different from the real, peerless sword. In the restaurant, the noisy atmosphere was replaced by a horrible silence. Corpses were lying in a pool of blood. Everyone's throat was pierced, and blood was still gurgling. Before, this place was very lively. These playboys talked loudly and regarded Lin Sun as a target to tease and humiliate him unscrupulously. But now they were all dead. Those Lin family's descendants didn't die, but they were all scared and fell to the ground, shivering all over, and their minds were blank. They didn't know who the murderer was, because Lin Sun stood outside the street and just looked up here. Except for that, he didn't do anything else from beginning to end. But only Xiao Qiao knew that it was Lin Sun who killed those playboys. In the cemetery outside the city, Lin Sun had killed those squires of the Wang family in the same way. All this was because Lin Sun glanced at them. This caused Xiao Cao's heart to tremble and feel even more perplexed. She couldn't understand how a fool who had been ridiculed, trampled, and humiliated for more than 20 years, and had long been reduced to a laughingstock in the city, seemed to have become another person in the blink of an eye. She really couldn't understand. At this time, Lin Sun withdrew his eyes and walked forward with his hands behind his back as if nothing had happened. Xiao Qiao couldn't understand his calm appearance. She couldn't help saying, "Those people you killed all have a great force behind them. They will definitely not let you go." She thought that Lin Sun would be afraid, or at least have some reaction. But Lin Sun didn't. From the beginning until the end, his footsteps were orderly, and he seemed to be calm, composed, and composed. Xiao Xiao was stunned. She gritted her teeth and continued to follow him. Behind them, there was a burst of exclamation and noise in the restaurant. Even Xiao Xiao knew that with the death of those playboys, there was bound to be a big storm in Yujing City today. But she had no time to care about it. Are you going to the Wang family? When she noticed that Lin Sun was going to the place where the Wang family was, Xiao Xiao couldn't help but stiffen and cry out involuntarily. You'd better calm down. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear it. Well, in that case, you'll miss a lot of interesting things. Lin Sun didn't look back, and his words seemed very calm. Xiao Xiao gritted her teeth and stared at Lin Sun's back. She thought in her heart, if you really plan to go to the Wang family, what's the difference between that and death? I can't wait for you to go there earlier. Thinking of this, she calmed down a lot. The Wang clan was the #1 power in Jade Capital that possessed monstrous authority, and there were numerous experts holding down the fort in the clan. Most importantly, everyone knew that the Wang clan's proudest son-in-law, Huang Fu Xiaoyu, had similarly returned with Wang Zilwan. Huang Fu Xiaoyu was the successor of the Green Cloud sect. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to see the mansion of the Wang family. It covered an area of hundreds of acres. The gate of the mansion was built high and lofty. In front of the gate, there were stone statues of auspicious beasts squatting and a team of guards standing on both sides. All of them were vigorous and extremely frightening. At this time, in front of the gate of the Wang family's mansion, there were many treasure carriages, beast carriages, and mounts. After handing in their visiting cards, the big shots in the city were led into the mansion one by one. This was called an endless stream of carriages and horses and a crowded gate. Since last night, the big shots who came to visit the Wang family were like running water, which showed how powerful the Wang family was in Yujing City now. In contrast, the current Lin family was more than deserted. It had fallen to the point that no one cared about it. P.S. Make up for yesterday's chapter. I still owe 2 chapters last time. Goldfish still remembers. Don't worry, I will return them one by one. Chapter 1428. My friend, please wait. Do you have an invitation? When Lin Sun walked to the gate of the Wang mansion, he was stopped by the guards at the gate. Today, there were many distinguished guests in the Wang mansion. Many big shots in the city came one after another. Without an invitation, it was impossible for anyone to enter the Wang mansion. And in order to prevent people from making trouble, the guards were all elite retainers of the Wang family. They were accomplished in cultivation and had extraordinary bearing. I'm not here as a guest, Lin Sun said calmly. Beside him, Xiao Xiao was silent, but she was extremely nervous. She knew very well that the fool in front of her was different from before. His means of killing were simply terrifying and incredible. If he broke into the Wang mansion, these guards would not be able to stop him at all. At the same time, she was eager for Lin Sun to make a big fuss, so that the masters of the Wang family would be alarmed and kill the fool. Hearing Lin Sun's words, the guards could not help but frown. At this time, a middle-aged man in brocade clothes and marten fur coat came out of a luxurious chariot next to them. He was surrounded by a group of retainers like stars around the moon. It was obvious that he was a big shot with an extraordinary identity. Young man, the gates of the Wang clan aren't a place that anyone can enter just because they want to. I've spent more than 10 years before I was able to walk through these gates with dignity. Even someone like you wants to enter? Even if you struggle for a lifetime, I'm afraid there's no hope. After that, the middle-aged man proudly walked past Lin Sun and went up slowly with his hands clasped behind his back. Senior Lu Hong, please come in. The guard at the gate of the Wang mansion said respectfully. Lin Sun frowned and thought of something in his mind. He said, So you are Lu Hong. In those years, he was often in a daze, but it did not mean that he did not remember. In his memory, when his father had a dispute with the heaven-reaching sword sect, Lu Hong was involved. This man was the deputy governor of Yujing City and had great power. Speaking of which, Lu Hong was his father's sworn brother. But since his father was seriously injured and died, Lu Hong drew a clear line with the Lin family. He even took the opportunity to seize the 3 mineral deposits that originally belonged to the Lin family. At that time, His mother was so angry that she cried so many times and scolded Lu Hong for being heartless and ungrateful. Later, Lin Sun learned that Lu Hong was originally a poor and abject scholar. Later, he gained recognition from his father and gradually gained a firm foothold in Yujing City. With his father's strong support, he became one of the 3 deputy governors of Yujing City. However, Lin Sun had little contact with the outside world before and had never seen Lu Hong, so he didn't recognize him at first sight. "You recognize me?" In front of the door, Lu Hong turned around and frowned. "It's not important whether I know you or not. What's important is that you came at the right time today. It saved me the time to look for you," Lin Sun said calmly. Lu Hong's face darkened. "Young man, what do you mean by that?" "Senior, please calm down. You are an honored guest of my Wong clan. Leave these small matters to us." In front of the mansion, the faces of those guards became cold. Obviously, they regarded Lin Sun as a troublemaker. Lu Hong snorted coldly and turned around to leave. In other places, he was sure to teach Lin Sun an unforgettable lesson for his disrespectful words. Who the hell was a young man who couldn't even enter the gate of the Wong clan? How could he speak so rudely? Lu Hong left, but Lin Sun didn't do anything. It suddenly occurred to him that since Lu Hong was here, other big shots in the city would come as well. In that case, why not wait a little longer? Maybe he could meet some people who had done harm to the Lin family. "My friend, I'll give you a chance. Get out of my sight now." A guard stared at Lin Sun with a cold look, full of killing intent. Lin Sun turned around and left. He stood far away on the opposite side of the street. There was a big banyan tree covered with snow. Standing under it, he could shelter himself from the snow. Seeing Lin Sun leave sensibly, those guards were all stunned. Then they all showed disdain and shook their heads. They thought Lin Sun was a thorn, but it turned out to be an egg. Xiao Xiao was very confused. She was extremely nervous before, thinking that there would be an extremely bloody battle. She never thought that Lin Sun would retreat like this. "What? You've learned to be afraid now?" Xiao Xiao said coldly. Under the banyan tree, Lin Sun looked calm and said, "In my eyes, the Wong family is like a big net. It's not too late to close the net when all the fish get in." Xiao Xiao's pupils suddenly dilated, and an indescribable chill arose in her heart. Was this guy going to catch all the enemies who had done harm to the Lin family in the past? But where did he get the confidence? In Xiao Xiao's impression, this silly young master had never cultivated since he was born. How many elixirs and secret manuals of cultivation had been prepared for him by the head of the Lin family, but he had never looked at them, let alone cultivated. Xiao Xiao didn't believe that there was someone in the world who could leap from a mortal to an omnipotent overmatch after figuring out a problem. Moreover, how could a fool who had been ignorant of worldly affairs in the past know which force and which enemy had done harm to Lin Sun over the years? All of this seemed extremely preposterous. Xiao Xiao had never seen such an absurd thing in her life. She didn't know that Lin Sun had awakened some kind of consciousness and possessed a soul and willpower far beyond imagination at the moment of the emergence of the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth. In the past 20 years, he just couldn't figure out a problem, but it didn't mean that he was a real fool, nor did it mean that he knew nothing about what had happened in the Lin family. In short, let alone a maidservant like Xiao Xiao, even those important figures with profound cultivation in this world probably wouldn't be able to understand and see through it. Lin Sun himself naturally couldn't explain it. Time passed little by little. Originally, the guards in front of the gate of the mansion were a little vigilant. After all, Lin Sun didn't really leave, which seemed a little strange. But after an hour, when Lin Sun still stood there without moving, they didn't bother to pay attention to him anymore. "It's almost time." Lin Sun looked at the sky and said to himself. At this time, Xiao Cao's lips had turned purple, her pretty face was pale, and her body was stiff. After all, it was too torturous to stand still in this icy and snowy day. But when she heard Lin Sun's words, her body shook and she didn't know where she got the strength to say, "Do you really want to die?" Lin Sun glanced at her and said, "You haven't had a good time in the Wong family these years, have you?" Xiao Xiao blurted out, "How do you know?" Lin Sun said, "We have been standing here for so long. It's understandable that they don't know me, but no one recognizes you as a maid serving Wang Zilwan. Do you think it's normal? Anyway, you are a member of the Wang family now." Xiao Qiao was stunned, and her expression changed constantly. It seemed that Lin Sun had seen through her mind. She said bitterly, "I don't serve Wang Zilwan, but a dog of Wang Zilwan. I don't have any status." Lin Sun was really stunned this time. After a while, he said, "I didn't expect that. It's all because of you." Xiao Qiao said angrily, "The Lin family was ruined, and I had nowhere to go. In order to survive, I could only seek shelter with someone else. When Wang Zilwan found out that I had once served you, she said that I had served a fool before, so how could I be qualified to serve her again? At most, I could only serve a dog that she raised." The more she said, the more aggrieved she was, and tears fell down. "Why do you want to go to the Wang family?" Lin Sun asked after a moment of silence. Xiao Qiao gnashed her teeth and said, "Do you think I want to? Go and ask. In Yujing City, without the consent of the Wang family, who dares to take in a maid from the Lin family like me?" Lin Sun said, "So, those squires and servants who left the Lin family had almost the same experience as you?" Xiao Qiao snorted and said, "That's not it. I should blame myself for serving you. Do you know, it's because of you that I can only serve a dog every day for all these years." She seemed to burst out at this moment with a belly full of anger and grievance. "No wonder when we met on the street yesterday, you were so anxious to disassociate yourself from me. And no wonder you took those squires to kill me today." Lin Sun sighed softly. Xiao Qiao said, "Do you understand now?" Lin Sun looked at Xiao Qiao with his dark eyes and said, "Do you think it's all my fault?" Xiao Qiao said without hesitation, "Whose fault can it be? My fault?" Lin Sun said indifferently, "When you were in the Lin family never mistreated you, and I never mistreated you. Although you were a maid in name, the treatment you enjoyed was much better than that of a maid. You live a life of luxury and luxury. But you never felt grateful. When the Lin family was ruined, you left the Lin family without hesitation and sought refuge with the Wang family. But you blamed all the unfairness you encountered in the Wang family on me. Don't you think it's ridiculous?" Speaking of this, Lin Sun's voice became indifferent. "Do you know why I told you so much? Because you have served me for many years, and I treat you as one of my own, but unfortunately, you let me down." After that, he walked away. Xiao Qiao was stunned. Her beautiful face changed, and her whole body was trembling. After a while, she gnashed her teeth and said, "If you had become so smart in the early years, how could I be like this? Disappointed? It's me who should be disappointed." As she said, she suddenly took a deep breath, and the cold wind poured into her chest, making her calm a lot. Looking at the back of Lin Sun in the distance, her eyes were cold, and she thought crazily in her heart, "Go to hell. When you die, I will have nothing to do with you." Subconsciously, she didn't believe that Lin Sun could walk out of the Wang family alive. At this time, Lin Sun had come to the gate of the Wang family again. When the guards saw him, they couldn't help being stunned, and then their faces became gloomy. "Why is it you again? Don't you give up? Get out of here. No matter what your purpose is, the gate of the Wang family is not for people like you to enter." A guard shouted and slapped at Lin Sun. P.S. As usual, 2 chapters in a row. Chapter 1429. This slap was extremely heavy and forceful, and it gave rise to a whistling sound. If Lin Sun was really an ordinary person who didn't know how to cultivate, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. But Lin Sun was naturally not an ordinary person. Bang! In the next moment, the slap descended. However, it landed on the guard's own face. Moreover, the strength of the slap had become extremely terrifying. The guard's head was smashed by himself. This scene looked extremely strange. It felt as if he had slapped himself to death, and it was bloody and horrifying. The other guards couldn't help but stare with their eyes wide open, as if they couldn't believe it or suspected that they had seen it wrong. At this time, Lin Sun had already walked towards the gate. "Stop!" With a clang, a guard pulled out his saber and slashed at Lin Sun angrily. This was a subconscious reaction. Puff! But the next moment, the saber turned around and pierced into the guard's throat, and blood suddenly burst out like a waterfall. Seeing this, the other guards trembled all over and their faces changed dramatically. They were shocked by this bloody scene, as if they had seen a ghost. At this time, Lin Sun had stepped into the gate of the Wang mansion. From beginning to end, he didn't look back at all. Those guards deserved to be the elite retainers of the Wang family. After realizing that something was wrong, they immediately wanted to shout to warn that there was an invasion. But when they opened their mouths to shout, they only felt a buzzing sound in their heads as if they were struck by lightning. The next moment, in front of the gate of the Wang mansion, there were corpses lying on the ground in disorder. All of them had their eyes wide open and stopped breathing. Although their bodies were intact, their souls had all been crushed. From beginning to end, Lin Sun didn't attack once, and he didn't even look back at all. But this strange scene of death made Xiao Cao's scalp numb in the distance, and her soul almost came out of her body. It wasn't that she hadn't seen a battle between cultivators, but she had never seen such a strange way of killing. Lin Sun was like a death god from hell. Wherever he passed, he was covered by the shadow of death, and no one survived. This was too terrifying. Impossible. He couldn't have walked out alive. Xiao Cao was in a daze. Instinctively, she strode forward and staggered towards the prince's residence. Today, the Wang family manor was filled with distinguished guests. Great figures had gathered, and it was extremely lively. Lanterns and colored banners were hung everywhere. Servants and maidservants shuttled back and forth in different areas, providing meticulous service to the guests. There were also elite guards distributed among them. There was a sentry every 5 steps and a sentry every 10 steps. The security was tight to prevent any accidents from happening. "Who are you? We'll let you in." When a strange young man like Lin Sun came in, he immediately attracted some vigilant eyes. Unfortunately, before they could react, all of them fell weakly to the ground and died silently. If one looked down from the sky, one could see that the squires and guards of the Wang family fell down one by one like weeds being harvested. From the beginning to the end, no one was able to make a sound to warn him. When Xiao Cao followed Lin Sun's footsteps and walked in, it was quiet and desolate along the way. Only corpses could be seen lying on the ground. Her heart tightened, her lips turned pale, and her mind trembled from fear. She didn't dare believe it, and she couldn't believe it. How could this be? There was no blood, no screams, and no intense collisions. So many people had died just like that, without a sound. Was this still the Wang family that she knew, regarded as the most powerful force in Yujing City? Before long, a burst of laughter came from afar. Xiao Cao found that she had come to the core of the Wang family unconsciously. Not far away was the reception hall. At this time, the hall was brightly lit, and people talked and laughed incessantly. Obviously, the great figures gathered in the reception hall hadn't noticed that a figure like the god of death was approaching them. This made Xiao Cao feel an indescribable chill all over her body. There were so many masters in the Wang family, and the defense force was so tight. But now, Lin Sun was invincible. This was too horrible and incredible. In the reception hall, Wang Tianxing, the patriarch of the Wang family, sat on the chief seat with a ruddy face and a reserved smile on his face. The hall was full of distinguished guests. All the big shots in Yujing City had gathered here today. Everyone had a humble and even slightly flattering smile on their faces. This made Wang Tianxing feel extremely comfortable. More than a decade ago, his Wang family was only a slightly mediocre force in the city. At that time, he, Wang Tianxing, could only put on a flattering smile and listen to the bigwigs present with his tail between his legs. But now, everything was different. In today's Yujing City, the power of the Wang family was enough to cover the sky with one hand. The turning point of everything was that his daughter married a good son-in-law. Thinking of this, Wang Tianxing glanced at the distance, where a handsome young man in a jade robe, a feather crown, and a python dragon belt sat. Huang Fu Xiaoyu, a core disciple of Qingyun's sect, with his amazing cultivation talent, had now been decided to be the next leader of Qingyun's sect. It could be said that it was because of Huangfu Xiaoyu that the Wang family had today's power and status. In a few years, when Xiaoyu takes charge of Qingyun's sect, the Wang family can also consider expanding our territory. Wang Tianxing thought fervently. Yujing City could no longer satisfy his ambition. Patriarch, there's just news that a bloody incident happened in a restaurant in the city. At that time, many disciples of different forces were killed. Just as Zhang Xian was deep in thought, a person who seemed to be a steward walked over and reported the matter to him via voice transmission. Some people suspect that this matter is likely to be the work of the Lin clan. After all, of the youths who participated in the gathering, only the Lin clan disciples were spared. Wang Tianxing frowned. The Lin family? Didn't they decline a long time ago? How can they still do this kind of thing? The steward also looked puzzled and said, I'm also very confused, so as soon as the news came out, I sent people to investigate. But until now, only one thing is confirmed. What is it? At that time, when those young people were killed, someone had seen Lin Sun, the young master who was expelled from the Lin family, appear outside the restaurant. You still don't suspect that the murderer is that fool, do you? Wang Tianxing suddenly sneered as if he had heard a big joke. Continued to investigate. Today's gathering is of great significance. Don't let this matter disturb everyone's interest. The steward nodded and left with the order. Wang Tianxing fell into deep thought. In this city, who dared to kill a group of foppish young masters and only let the disciples of the Lin family go? Could it really be done by someone related to the Lin family? Subconsciously, he directly ignored Lin's son. How could such a weak fool do such a thing? At the same time, Huangfu Xiaoyu was talking with his beautiful wife, Wang Zilwan. How's it going? What's the matter? Wang Zilwan was stunned. Have you forgotten? Huangfu Xiaoyu frowned. Wang Zilwan thought for a moment and remembered, and couldn't help laughing. You don't need to worry about such a small matter. If nothing unexpected happens, that fool will never appear again in this lifetime. Huangfu Xiaoyu seemed to be a little displeased and said, I just got the news that a sensational event happened in the city an hour ago. Some foppish young masters were killed, and someone had seen that fool appear outside the restaurant. That's impossible. Wang Zilwan's expression changed slightly. You wouldn't be suspecting that all those foppish young masters were killed by that fool, right? I'm very clear that this fellow has never cultivated at all. Huangfu Xiaoyu frowned and said, but he didn't die, and he appeared in the city. He didn't completely vanish like he said. Wang Zilwan was slightly flustered because of Huangfu Xiaoyu's displeasure, and she immediately summoned a maidservant and asked, Has that bitch Xiao Qiao returned? The maidservant shook her head. No. Wang Zilwan was stunned. It's been so long, yet she still hasn't returned. Could it be that an accident really occurred? Xiaoyu, wait a moment. I'll go check it myself. Wang Zilwan stood up and hurriedly walked out of the hall. She gritted her teeth in secret. Xiao Qiao, you trash. You can't even do a small thing, yet you want to obtain my trust? Dream on. She walked out of the hall in a rage and almost collided with a figure that walked towards her. Are you blind? Fuck off. She couldn't help but berate. When she raised her head, she saw a young man in thin white clothes blocking her path, and he didn't have the slightest intention of avoiding her. This caused her to be even more infuriated. Wang Zilwan, the white-clothed young man, spoke with an indifferent expression, and he seemed to want to confirm it. After all, he'd only met her once over 10 years ago, and Wang Zilwan was only a 13 or 14-year-old young woman at that time. Who are you? How dare you call me by my name? Where are the guards? Are they all dead? How could a stranger appear here? Wang Zilwan's beautiful brows knit together as she burst into rage. In these past few years, as the wife of Huangfu Xiaoyu, she'd lived like a princess, and she was respected and fawned upon no matter where she went. Who dared to call her by her name like this? The white-clothed young man had a calm expression as he looked at the beautiful woman that was throwing a tantrum before him. If he didn't see it with his own two eyes, he wouldn't dare be sure that this was the young woman that personally ran over to him and broke off the engagement with him in a domineering and arrogant manner. Even though her appearance had changed greatly, her arrogant temper seemed to have become even worse after these years. Madam, he is Lin's son. In the distance, Xiao Xiao appeared and said with trembling lips, What Lin's son? Speaking of this, Wang Zilwan suddenly realized something and widened her eyes. You mean he is Lin's son? Obviously, she didn't recognize Lin's son after more than 10 years of not seeing him. After the shock, she subconsciously asked, Why is this fool here? Xiao Xiao, did you bring him here, bitch? Didn't I say that I'll never see him again? Speaking of this, she was so angry that she unconsciously raised her tone, and her voice became sharp because of anger. All of a sudden, the originally lively atmosphere in the reception hall behind her was disturbed by her scream, and many people looked over. P.S. There will be another update at about 11 o'clock in the evening. Chapter 1430. Wang Zilwan was the daughter of the head of Wang family and the wife of Huangfu Xiaoyu. Needless to say, her identity was noble, but she screamed outside the hall at this time, which was hard to not attract attention. What on earth happened? Wang Tianqing frowned and looked over. Huangfu Xiaoyu put down the wine glass in his hand, and a trace of displeasure appeared in his eyes. At this moment, many people looked over. Then, they saw Lin Sun standing outside the hall. Outside the hall, it was snowing heavily. Under the light, the floating blood flowers were glowing with enchanting and magnificent luster, which was very beautiful. A figure in thin white clothes stood there, blocking Wang Zilwan's path. Or rather, Wang Zilwan blocked his path. Who was this person? Many people were puzzled and a little surprised. This was the Wang family, and the guest reception hall was the core place. Ordinary young people were not qualified to come here at all. There was a short silence in the originally lively atmosphere in the hall. What? Lu Hong recognized Lin's son and was a little surprised. He said, Wasn't this guy driven away? How'd he sneak in again? Do you know this person, Governor Lu Hong? Someone asked. Lu Hong shook his head and sneered. A young man who doesn't even have an invitation and doesn't even have the qualifications to enter the prince's mansion. How could I possibly recognize him? When I first arrived, I only remembered that the guards were chasing him away. I didn't expect that he would actually come back. His words caused everyone in the main hall to burst out laughing. They were big shots in the city, and of course, it was impossible for them to know that the young man in front of them was the child of Lin family, who had been ridiculed by them for many years. Wang Tianqing's face darkened, and he was furious. What kind of people are allowed to come in? Where are the guards? Are they all dead? Wang Zilwan, standing in front of Lin's son, suddenly realized that yes, were the guards. Why were they all gone? They're all dead, all dead. Xiao Xiao pointed at Lin's son in the distance with a pale face and trembling voice. He killed them, he killed them. What? Suddenly, everyone present narrowed their eyes. Only Wang Zilwan sneered as if she wanted to hear a big joke. It's impossible, he is a... Before she could say the word fool, she only felt suffocated and a tsunami-like force came to her. Bang! Her entire body flew out and fell into the main hall, smashing a table into pieces. Tea, wine, and delicacies splashed all over her face. This sudden scene caused a commotion in the main hall, especially Wang Tianqing and Huangfu Xiaoyu. Their expressions had already turned gloomy. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it and strolled into the reception hall. Bastard! How dare you commit murder in the Wang clan? How audacious! Scram! A big shot of the Wang family rushed out like a furious lion and punched at Lin's son. The power of his palm was as terrible as the Yangtze River. All right, many people's eyes lit up. This punch was full of strength and contained the power of the Great Path. It could definitely be called the peak attack of the Grotto Heaven realm. Crack! However, when the big shot of the Wang family was only 1 foot away from Lin's son, his fist was shattered directly. Then, he knelt on the ground, and with a bang the ground caved in. He couldn't help but cry out in pain. Seeing this scene, everyone's face suddenly changed. Although the big shot of the Wang family was not a first-class figure, he was also a ruthless man. But now he knelt directly, and the young man in white didn't even make a move. Many people realized that something was wrong. As the saying went, those who came with good intentions didn't come with good intentions. This young man in white was obviously a hidden master. But who on earth was he, and what did he want to do here? Friend, you've gone too far. This is the Wong family, not a place for you to behave atrociously. You. Lu Hong's face darkened, and he shouted. Crack! Before he finished his words, he was slapped away by Lin Sun across the air. The power of this slap was great. Although Lu Hong was a deputy governor with great power, he was just a strong practitioner in the reincarnation developing realm. He directly turned into a black shadow and spun more than 10 times in the air before falling to the ground with a thud. Half of his face was swollen, and his facial bones were broken, covered with blood. How dare you ignore the Wong family? Go take down this madman. Wang Tianxing's face was livid with anger. He pointed at Lin Sun with his eyes wide open. A group of big shots and squires of the Wong family, standing near him, had already noticed that something was wrong, but now they could only brace themselves and rush forward. But how could they be Lin Sun's opponent? Before they could get close, they were forced to kneel on the ground by the power emitted from Lin Sun's body. Their kneecaps were broken, and screams followed. Seeing this scene, all the big shots present changed their faces and were completely chilled. No matter how ignorant they were, they all realized that the young man in white in front of them was absolutely a horrible figure. As for Wang Tianxing, his eyelids twitched and he was horrified. He realized that something was wrong. He took a deep breath and said, May I ask who you are, friend? If the Wang family has offended you, please tell us. Father, he is Lin Sun. Wang Zilwan, whose face was covered with soup and vegetable leaves, shouted. Lin Sun? At first, all the big shots present were stunned, and then they immediately realized who this name was. They were all shocked and almost couldn't believe their ears. The fool who was born with the luck of heaven and earth? How could this be possible? Even Wang Tianxing was confused. The fool of the Lin family? For more than 20 years, who didn't know how ridiculous and funny this fool was? The young man in white in front of them was so powerful and terrible. How could he be that fool? You are really Lin Sun? Lin Xiaorong's son? An old man couldn't help asking. Crack! As soon as he finished speaking, the old man was slapped to the ground and fell on his face, unable to get up again. Can you call my father's name directly? Lin Sun's eyes were cold and his tone was casual. But his words made everyone completely sure that this man was really the famous fool in Yujing City. But how could he become so terrible? This fact seemed to be too horrifying. A fool that was publicly acknowledged by everyone had suddenly transformed into an unfathomable and terrifying figure. Was this something that anyone could accept? Lin Sun, did you come for revenge because I broke off the engagement with you? If so, you can come for me alone. Wang Zilwan stood up with her hair disheveled. Her face was still stained with soup and vegetable leaves, and she stared at Lin Sun angrily. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and sneered. You think too highly of yourself. Do you deserve it? Wang Zilwan seemed to be greatly humiliated. Her face suddenly changed, and she said, If not, why did you break into my Wang family today and commit murder? It's very simple. I want to settle accounts with everyone here, including your Wang family. As soon as Lin Sun said this, everyone present was shocked. Many people realized something, and their faces changed greatly. Some slow-witted people soon understood that Lin Sun was here not only for revenge, but also to demand an explanation for Lin family, which had been declining for a long time. The downfall of your Lin family has nothing to do with us. A short and fat middle-aged man in gorgeous clothes said coldly. Bang! As soon as he finished his words, he was forced to kneel down by a terrible power. For a moment, everyone in the hall was as silent as a cicada in winter. They were all frightened. From the moment Lin Sun appeared until now, he didn't do anything, but the big shots knelt down on the ground. That kind of terrible power was too shocking. It doesn't matter whether it's related or not. What matters is that from now on, please cooperate with me. Otherwise, I don't mind slaughtering your clansmen after killing you. Lin Sun said indifferently. Before entering the Wang mansion, his divine sense had already covered the entire Wang mansion, and he had seen everything in the guest hall. He had long since confirmed the identity and background of everyone present. To him, some people were already no different from dead people. What on earth do you want to do? Wang Tianxing gritted his teeth, and his face was cloudy. What do I want to do? Of course, I want revenge. I heard yesterday that from now on, there'll be no Lin family in Yujing City, right? Lin Sun smiled faintly, and his eyes were cold. Wang Tianxing snorted, today's Lin family is no different from existing in name only. Everyone in Yujing City knows this. Lin Sun's eyes became colder. I also heard that a few years ago, you said that the wisest decision you made in your life was to break off the engagement with Lin family? Wang Tianxing looked a little uneasy and said, your father also agreed to break off the engagement. You can't blame anyone. But why does your Wang family want to kill me? As soon as Lin Sun said this, Wang Tianxing was stunned. Really? Father, it's my idea. In the distance, Wang Zilwan's face suddenly changed, and he spoke loudly. Enough. Suddenly, Huang Fu Xiaoyu, who had been silent all the time, pounded the table and stood up. He looked at Lin Sun with a cold face and sharp eyes. Do you know what you're doing? His words were filled with endless coldness. All the big shots present breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, they were all frightened by Lin Sun before. They were in a state of panic and fear. But now, when they saw Huang Fu Xiaoyu stand out, they seemed to have found a savior and hope. Huang Fu Xiaoyu was the core disciple of Green Cloud sect and the successor of the next headmaster. With him, how could the fool dare to run wild? With the great power of Green Cloud sect covering the whole world, it was enough to crush him easily. Xiaoyu. Wang Zilwan was so excited that she cried, you have to uphold justice for our Wang family. Don't worry, I'm here. Huang Fu Xiaoyu looked arrogant. He looked at Lin Sun and said, the destruction of your Lin family was caused by your father's overestimation of his strength and his intention to compete with Green Cloud sect for the mineral vein. If you want to take revenge, you could go to Green Cloud sect. But do you dare? Many people couldn't help sneering. Yes, do you dare to go against Green Cloud sect? But the next moment, their smiles froze. Because in their eyes, Lin Sun's slap was like swatting a fly. Then, Huang Fu Xiaoyu, the core disciple of Green Cloud sect and a famous talent in Jade Capital, who was regarded as their savior and hope, was slapped away. His mouth and nose were bleeding, and his teeth were peeled off. He hit the wall in the distance with a thud. His body was twitching violently because of the severe pain. Suddenly, everyone was shocked, and there was a dead silence. P.S. If you don't think it's too late, there will be another update after midnight. Those who can't wait can watch it tomorrow morning. In addition, please ask for tickets. Chapter 1431. Huang Fu Xiaoyu was like a legend in the eyes of these big shots in Yujing City. He had a status and strength that they could look up to and even revere. Because of his existence, Wang family, a second-rate force, had become the largest force in Yujing City in the past 10 years. It was precisely because of his appearance today that these great figures had put down everything they were doing and gathered at the Wang clan today. Otherwise, Wang Tianxing alone would not be enough to make them do this. But now, Huang Fu Xiaoyu was sent flying by a slap. His cheeks were red and swollen, his teeth fell off, and his body was trembling. Everyone was dumbfounded. They felt like a mountain had collapsed in front of them. Ow! How dare you, Wang Zilwan screamed. Yes, how dare he? Who gave him the courage? You're courting death. In the distance, Huang Fu Xiaoyu crawled up from the ground, and he was angered to the point his eyes almost split apart while his voice was filled with rage. Being slapped flying under the gazes of everyone was the first time he'd experienced such humiliation, and it caused him to be on the verge of going mad. Kneel down. Lin Sun's body suddenly emitted a terrifying power. Huang Fu Xiaoyu fell to the ground on all fours, and his head was pressed against the ground, unable to be raised again. He wanted to shout madly, but he couldn't make a sound. In the end, he actually fainted from the rage that attacked his heart. At this point, everyone in the hall was completely cold and horrified. When they looked at Lin Sun again, there was unconcealable horror in their eyes. Was it really that fool? Wang Tianxing suddenly remembered something. Just now, his supervisor came to report that a bloody incident occurred in a restaurant in the city. Some playboys in the city were killed, and he didn't know who the murderer was. The only thing he knew was that Lin Sun had appeared outside the restaurant. At that time, Wang Tianqing sneered and thought it couldn't be done by a fool. But now, Wang Tianqing felt like a fool. After so many years, he didn't know that the fool was such a terrifying figure. Now, it seems that everyone has nothing to say. Let's settle the score, Lin Sun said indifferently. Outside the hall, it was snowing heavily and the cold wind was biting. But in comparison, everyone found that Lin Sun's words were colder, so cold that their blood was about to freeze. Settle the score. How could it be a good thing? Lu Hong, do you know your crime? Asked Lin Sun. What crime have I committed? Even if you want to settle the score, you should at least let me know what I did wrong, right? Lu Hong braced himself and said while kneeling on the ground. Puff! A wisp of sword chi flashed out and chopped off his head, causing fresh blood to spray. Everyone's body trembled. This was a deputy city lord, and he was killed just like that. Lin Sun turned his eyes to the short and fat middle-aged man in a luxurious robe and said, Qian Kunlong, do you know your crime? Qian Kunlong, the head of the Qian clan, was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. His lips trembled as he said, Let me think, I puff. Sword chi shot out and cut off his head. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed very impatient. He didn't even want to ask or wait. However, the more he acted this way, the more disappointed those big shots became. Lin Sun, if you kill us, your Lin family can forget about having a foothold in Jade Capital City. A tall and thin old man roared angrily. Puff! As soon as he finished speaking, his head was chopped off. Lin Sun didn't even look at him. He looked at a middle-aged scholar with white skin and no beard and said, Chu Huaizhen, do you know your crime? The latter knelt down and wailed, I know my crime, I know my crime. I promise I will pay back the things I took from Lin family. No, I will pay back 10 times. I only asked Child Lin to forgive me once. You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. As soon as Lin Sun finished speaking, a wisp of sword chi flashed out and pierced Chu Huaizhen's sea of chi, abolishing his cultivation. Chu Huaizhen looked gloomy, as if he had aged countless years all of a sudden. His lips wriggled for a long time, and finally he said bitterly, Thank you for not killing me, Child Lin. Lin Sun looked at the next person. However, before he could speak, the man had knelt down and kowtowed. I also admit my crime. Please be merciful, Child Lin. I promise to return all the things I took from Lin family a few years ago. Plop, plop. Then, some other big shots present could no longer bear the horrible and oppressive bloody atmosphere. They knelt down on the ground and begged. In the end, Wang Tianqing also knelt down with a pale face. He knew that Wang family was going to suffer this time. Even if he was angry and unwilling, he could only bow his head. Even if he couldn't accept it, he could only kneel down. Because Wang Tianqing was not the only one in Wang family. There were many other clansmen. If they wanted to preserve their bloodline, they had to make sacrifices. Father, Wang Zilwan's mind went blank as if she had lost all her strength and collapsed to the ground. At that time, she had angrily gone to the boy who was regarded as a fool and ridiculed him unceremoniously. But she didn't expect that after more than 10 years, the foolish boy appeared in front of her in this way. Her husband, whom she was so proud of, and her father, whom she relied on, were all kneeling at her feet. At this moment, Wang Zilwan suddenly thought that if she hadn't broken off the engagement, would all this not have happened? Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Outside the hall, Xiao Qiao was so shocked that she knelt on the ground and stared at all this, feeling it was so unreal. She thought that Lin Sun would be killed by the masters of Wang family, and it was impossible for him to leave alive. But what did she see now? One after another, the big shots in the city fell at Lin Sun's feet. Some were dead, and some were no different from being dead, even if they weren't dead. Even if it was Huang Fu Xiaoyu, he seemed so weak and tiny. He has really changed. Xiao Qiao was lost, and her heart was replaced by endless remorse. She knew that the reason why Lin Sun didn't kill her was that he wanted her to see what happened with her own eyes. If you didn't repay kindness with evil, I would give you a carefree future for the sake of the past years, even if you worked for Wang family. Unfortunately, you let me down. A voice sounded in her ears, awakening Xiao Qiao, who had fallen into a trance. When she raised her head, she saw that Lin Sun was standing in front of her without any emotion. Can I fix it? Xiao Qiao showed a pleading look. Don't worry, I won't kill you. But you also know that from now on, as long as I'm alive, I'm afraid no one will dare to take you in. If you want to survive, you can only rely on yourself. Good luck. After saying that, Lin Sun walked away. Young master, Xiao Qiao cried and wanted to catch up with him, but there was no sign of Lin Sun. The world was covered with a vast expanse of white snow. On this day, a series of things that happened in Wang family caused a sensation in the whole Jade capital. Countless shocked and uproar voices reverberated in the snowy world. No one had expected that the young master of Lin family, who had been regarded as a joke for more than 20 years, would avenge his parents in such a bloody way. No one had expected that the strong, including Huang Fu Xiaoyu, Wang Tianxing, Lu Hong, and other big shots, would be trampled under the feet of a person like vulnerable ants. Many big shots died. Many big shots were also disabled. Wang Zilwan also died, and her younger brother Wang Zilong was not spared. His throat was pierced by a piece of chicken bone. When he died, his eyes were wide open, full of unwillingness. Probably they didn't expect that the bone they threw to Lin Sun yesterday would be returned the next day. In short, many big shots died in Jade Capital that day. In the following period, the division of forces in Jade Capital also ushered in a reshuffle. The Wang clan, which had been extremely powerful in the city for more than 10 years, was now on the brink of destruction. After leaving Wang family, Lin Sun returned to Lin family. At that time, Lin family didn't know what he had done. Lin Sun didn't explain, but just told those clansmen who looked at him with disgust and rejection, I have avenged my parents and my clan. As long as I'm alive, Lin family won't be destroyed. But whether you die or not has nothing to do with me in the future. If anyone dares to act in my name, don't blame me for killing my own family. After that, he turned around and left. At that time, those clansmen of Lin family were still full of ridicule and even excitement. They couldn't wait for Lin Sun to disappear in front of them, so that they wouldn't lose face because of this fool. As for acting in Lin Sun's name, it was even more impossible. Who would act in the name of a fool? They must have a cramp in their brains. But when what happened in Wang family came out in the city, those clansmen of Lin family were dumbfounded. Emotions of regret, annoyance, and unwillingness surged in their hearts. Lin Sun is so despicable. He is so powerful. Why didn't he show his real ability until now? It's so hateful to watch our Lin family fall. Humph. No matter what, we are Lin Sun's relatives after all. Even if we do things in his name, so what? Does he really dare to kill us all? Isn't he afraid of being criticized by the world and bearing the infamy of killing his relatives? These angry discussions continued to play out in the Lin family. Later, someone plucked up the courage to act in the name of Lin Sun's cousin and successfully occupied a restaurant in the city. Later, some people wantonly expanded the power of Lin family in the name of Lin Sun's relatives. Later, Lin family gradually rose from decline and decline, and every clansman of Lin family lived a comfortable life again. And then, a young man of Lin family was killed in a dispute with others, and the murderer fled. Lin family was furious, but they couldn't find the murderer and could do nothing about it. Then, somehow, the words Lin Sun said when he left the Lin family spread throughout the city. Did Lin Sun draw a clear line with Lin family? All the major forces in the city got the news at the first time. From then on, Lin family's rise began to suffer setbacks. Before long, the situation became precarious again. From then on, those clansmen of Lin family realized that Lin Sun really wouldn't care about his relatives anymore. For a moment, they were angry, hateful, and helpless. More than that, they felt a kind of unspeakable regret. If they hadn't driven Lin Sun out of Lin family at that time, Lin family would have been the ruler of Yujing City. Unfortunately, it was too late to regret. Fortunately, everyone knew that Lin Sun came from Lin family. Even if there were conflicts between Lin family and Lin family, Lin Sun wouldn't care about it. However, No one dared to go too far for fear of drawing Lin Sun out. Although Lin family didn't live a good life in the years to come, at least they didn't fall into ruin. Of course, these were all things in the future. On the day he left Lin family, Lin Sun left Yujing City and went to Green Cloud Sect. 3 days later, Green Cloud Sect, regarded as the first force in the world, was destroyed by Lin Sun alone and disappeared. The world was terrified. P.S. All the updates owed have been made up. My friends, don't forget to smash the tickets when you're having fun watching this. Chapter 1432. Outside Jade Capital, in the cemetery, Lin Sun stood alone in front of his parents' grave and kept silent for a long time. Looking up at the sky, he took a deep breath and murmured, "When falsehood is true, truth is false. When there is nothing, there is nothing. When truth and falsehood are illusory, I am true, and Tao is true." A kind of ethereal and mysterious understanding came to Lin Sun's mind. It was snowing heavily, and everything in front of him gradually became illusory, blurred, and disappeared into nothingness. In primitive times, there was a mighty man who dreamed one day and turned into a butterfly, flying and shuttling among flowers and plants. When he woke up, he was confused. Which was true and which was illusory? Was the butterfly transformed into me, or I transformed into the butterfly? This was the confusion between truth and falsehood and illusion. Now, Lin Sun passed the 9th test of Green Cloud Path and entered the samsara. After more than 20 years of meditation, he saw through the truth and falsehood and saw himself. In cultivation, the truth was a kind of understanding of one's own body. Even if those experiences eventually disappeared as illusory, they were all experienced by Lin Sun, so they were true. On the Green Cloud Path in the heaven accessing place, Lin Sun's figure reappeared. After a slight trance, his eyes became clear again, his mind was ethereal, and his breath also had a kind of transcendent charm. Congratulations, you've passed the last test. Under the gate to the heaven accessing place, the mysterious woman got up from sitting cross-legged and looked at Lin Sun with a hint of surprise in her eyes. What Lin Sun had experienced was seen by her. It seemed that more than 20 years were like a short reincarnation. But in the heaven accessing place, it was only more than 20 days. However, it was hard for the mysterious woman to calm down, because what Lin Sun saw, felt, and comprehended during the test, she couldn't see or perceive. The only thing she could be sure of was that Lin Sun successfully saw himself and passed the test. Because of this, she couldn't understand it. When did you have an epiphany? The mysterious woman couldn't help asking. This was the first time she took the initiative to ask. Lin Sun thought about it and didn't hide it. He said, "I knew who I was the moment I was born." The mysterious woman's eyes narrowed. "But why didn't you succeed at that time?" Lin Sun said, "Because I was confused at that time. I couldn't tell who I was. If I was sure that I was not the young master of Lin family in Jade Capital, how could I be sure that I was the lineal descendant of Lin family in Heart Cleansing Peak?" The mysterious woman seemed to come to a sudden understanding, and she said, "You're thinking if everything you're experiencing right now is an illusion as well?" Lin Sun nodded. "Yes, I've never thought about it before, so I've been confused and even doubted that the previous experience and the experience in the samsara may be illusory." Pausing for a moment, he smiled and said, "That's why I've been thinking about who I'm all these years in Jade Capital City. What's real and what's illusory? I've been thinking about it for over 20 years. The mysterious woman's eyes lit up and she said, "This is called the illusory barrier. It's also seen by Buddhist cultivators as the self-seeing barrier. However, do you know that only saints will face the test of the power of negative karma?" Lin Sun was stunned. "Sage?" The mysterious woman said, "Yes, what you were confused about at that time was a tribulation of the saint realm called heart-seeking and truth-seeking. It points directly to the state of mind of the great Tao. Suffering from the true and false great Tao is the most terrible thing. Once you can't break through this tribulation, all your great Tao will become illusory and vanish." Lin Sun was surprised. Only then did he realize that the confusion he experienced was related to a tribulation on the way of the saint realm. But the point was that he hadn't become a saint yet. Lin Sun's expression also became a little strange. He finally understood why the mysterious woman looked at him in such a strange way. Obviously, she also felt extremely incredible about it. What did you realize in the end? The mysterious woman continued to ask. Lin Sun said without hesitation, I'm real. It was just 3 words, but it seemed very normal. It was a very simple principle. A real person with flesh and blood was obviously real. But the mysterious woman knew that Lin Sun really understood it. As far as she knew, from ancient times to the present, there were countless saints who disappeared in the tribulation of heart-seeking and truth-seeking on the way of the saint realm. It was an incredible miracle that Lin Sun, a strong man of the king realm in the 7th tribulation of longevity, could comprehend this in the 9th level of Green Cloud Path by chance. What do you feel you've changed? The mysterious woman asked again. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, My state of mind has changed. In those 20 years, my state of mind experienced countless tortures and tribulations between true and false. Now, I won't be confused by it anymore. After thinking for a while, he added, and I'm not afraid of the karmic tribulation. His words were calm, but he showed absolute confidence. At this point, the mysterious woman stopped asking and turned her hand. Buzz. Suddenly, a magnificent rain of light appeared on Green Cloud Path. Finally, it turned into 3 light balls and floated in front of Lin Sun. In the first light ball, there was a pair of illusory black wings. They were dark like the color of the eternal night, giving people an ethereal charm. The mysterious woman's cold voice sounded. The first treasure is the reward for breaking through the 7th level, flame-burning realm. It's called Wings of Burning God. With it, you can teleport 3,000 miles away, which is no different from the space teleportation of the Saint Realm. Suddenly, Lin Sun's eyes brightened. He realized that this treasure was completely an escape artifact. Space teleportation. Even if it was only 3,000 miles away, it was enough to play a life-saving role in a life-and-death situation. The only drawback is that if you use this treasure with the cultivation below the Saint Realm, it will consume your own spirit and shorten your lifespan. In serious cases, it will even damage the foundation of Tao. I suggest you don't use this treasure unless it's a critical moment. The mysterious woman's words calmed Lin Sun a lot, but he was still tempted. It was very clear that if he could make full use of this treasure, it could be used as a life-saving trump card. The second treasure is the reward for breaking through the 8th level, Tao breaking. It's called Guide of 1,000 Tricks in the Sky. If you get lost in the boundless sea of stars, fall into the maze of heaven and earth, or stray into a perilous situation, you can use this treasure to infer the way out. However, how much you can infer depends on your own cultivation. Hearing the mysterious woman's voice, Lin Sun looked up. Within the second ball of light was a simple and crude bronze instrument. It was shaped like a lamp, and its surface was covered in dense and obscure markings of the Grand Tao. Moreover, there was a pointer that seemed like a dragon or snake at the center of the wick. This was the Guide of 1,000 Tricks in the Sky, an ancient treasure with a special function. Lin Sun's eyes also became hot. The value of this treasure was absolutely inestimable. If he entered some strange and unknown places and couldn't get out of them, he might be able to use this treasure to guide him. When Lin Sun looked at the third light ball, he couldn't help but be stunned because there was only one light in the light ball. This light was gentle and sacred, giving off a mysterious and unfathomable feeling. Senior, what's the reward for the 9th level? Lin Sun was curious. It's a kind of power. The mysterious woman looked a little strange, and her eyes drifted. You haven't awakened your talent yet, have you? Lin Sun was stunned and shook his head. In this world, there were tens of thousands of races, and almost every race had a kind of talent power hidden in their blood. With talent power, there's the possibility of awakening talent power. For example, the talent power of the Black Sea Dog tribe was Smell of Tao. For example, the talent power of the Cyan Phoenix tribe was Feather Carrying the Mountain. As a descendant of the spirit-eating insect, Little Silver's talent power was Spirit-eating Swordsmanship, aimed at the soul. And the human tribe also had different talent power, such as Lin Sun's devouring abyss source spiritual vein. But up to now, he hadn't awakened the talent power of devouring abyss. In the past, he thought that the talent power of the devouring abyss was the way of star obliteration, which was related to the power of Tao. But now, Lin Sun had already concluded that the way of star obliteration was just a strange Tao, which could only be controlled and comprehended by the talent of devouring abyss. It was not a talent power. Could it be that this power is related to innate divine abilities? Lin Sun thought of something and looked at a light in the third light ball. The mysterious woman nodded. Yes, it is called Destiny Dark Power. It can awaken the talent power and stimulate the source brand in the talent, so that the practitioner can control a magic power that belongs to his own talent. Speaking of this, she looked at Lin Sun and said, "However, I suggest that you should awaken the source brand in the talent by yourself, and then use this power. In this way, you may get an incredible effect." One was active awakening, and the other was passive awakening. It was destined to be different. Lin Sun suddenly understood and couldn't help being moved. What a mysterious power the Destiny Dark Power was. How could it stimulate the source brand in the talent? Not long after, Lin Sun put away the Burning God Wing, Destiny Dark Power, and Destiny Dark Power one by one. He was extremely surprised that he could get such generous and amazing rewards after passing the last 3 tests of Green Cloud Path. At this time, he really came to the gate of the heaven-reaching path. This gate was towering and boundless, and its top couldn't be seen at a glance. The whole gate seemed to be made of bronze, and it was filled with a vast and ancient aura. Standing in front of it, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel like a drop in the ocean and an ant. This gate to heaven was so lofty that it didn't seem to exist in the world. "Are you going to try to push the gate now?" The mysterious woman asked with unprecedented solemnity. "There's only one chance. If you can't push it open, there will be no possibility to push the gate in the future." Lin Sun couldn't help but feel awestruck. He stood in front of the gate and fell into silence. Time passed little by little. The mysterious woman was also silent and didn't say anything. This decision needed to be made by Lin Sun himself. After a long time, Lin Sun took a deep breath and seemed to make a decision. P.S. The second chapter is a little late. Chapter 1433. Under the mysterious woman's gaze, Lin Sun shook his head. "Let's talk about it later." He looked calm, without any unwillingness or other emotions. He had to go step by step. When he learned that the mystery of his life could only be solved when he set foot on the starry ancient path, Lin Sun knew that he couldn't be in a hurry. He hadn't become a saint yet, so he was not ready to go to the starry ancient path. There were still many things to do, and the heaven accessing place involved a lot. Because of this treasure, his mother, Luo Qingxuan, was regarded as a traitor and was hunted down. She fell into this world many years ago, and her bloodline power was destroyed. It could be said that the heaven accessing place was an extremely key treasure for Lin Sun to know the truth of that year. Naturally, he couldn't tolerate the possibility of being rejected by the door to heaven. At present, he was not sure whether he could push the door open, so he would rather not do it and firmly grasp the heaven accessing place. As long as the heaven accessing place existed, there would be a chance to push the door sooner or later. The mysterious woman was stunned at first. She thought that Lin Sun would choose to push the door without hesitation with his courage and will, but he didn't. This made her a little disappointed. Immediately, this disappointment was replaced by a touch of appreciation. She said, "It's a kind of great wisdom to know when to stop." Lin Sun laughed at himself and said, "Senior, you flatter me. I just feel that it's a little overconfident to push the door now." This made the mysterious woman have a strong feeling in her heart. Before, she only thought that Lin Sun had a chance to push the door open. But now, she thought that Lin Sun was very likely to push the door open. Even if this was a thing in the future, it made the mysterious woman look forward to it. A young immortal king realm expert at the peak of the path to immortality was able to see through the state of creating something from nothing and see through the trap of seeking truth from the heart. This was simply an impossible miracle, and it gave the mysterious woman too many surprises. How could she not look forward to the scene when Lin Sun came to push the door one day? Lin family, heart-cleansing peak. After more than 20 days, Lin Sun came out of the closed-door training. Young master, during the days when you were in closed-door training, our Lin family. Lin Zhong appeared the first time and wanted to report the recent situation of Lin family, but he was interrupted by Lin Sun with a smile. Granddad Zhong, you don't need to report these things to me in the future. Lin Zhong was stunned. Lin Sun said, I'm destined to leave in 10 years. It's time for the Lin family to choose an heir. Only then did Lin Zhong understand. With a complicated expression, he said, Young master, I understand. I will definitely look after the Lin family. When he spoke up to her, he recalled something and said, Right, Miss Jing Xian came over a while ago, and she asked you to meet her at the Imperial Palace after you come out of closed-door cultivation. Lin Sun was stunned. Is there anything tricky in the Empire recently? Lin Zhong shook his head. Not really. Lin Sun thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Imperial Palace, Qian Yuan Great Hall. Lin Sun, you finally came. When Lin appeared, Zhao Jingxian couldn't help but get up with a smile. After welcoming him into the hall and taking a seat, she personally poured a cup of tea for him. When the palace maids and guards saw this scene, they couldn't help but feel shocked. Rumor had it that Her Highness was on good terms with the head of the Lin family, but they didn't expect that the relationship between the two would be so intimate. Could it be that these palace maids and guards couldn't help but let their imaginations run wild? You can all leave now. Zhao Jingxian waved her hand to disperse the maids and guards until only she and Lin Sun were left in the hall. Then she took out a jade slip and handed it to Lin Sun. This is about the deeds of Lu Boya. Master Lu is not an ordinary person. Take a look and you'll understand. Lin Sun took the jade slip at once and read it carefully. Not long after, a strange expression couldn't help but appear between his brows. The information in the jade slip was very brief, and only a few things were recorded. However, all of these things were extremely shocking. For example, the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire was originally established by Lu Boya. All kinds of spiritual tattoo warships developed by the Academy of Spiritual Implements were built by the means of spiritual tattoos personally taught by Lu Boya. In short, Lu Boya was the founder of the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire. At that time, Lu Boya was called Elder Lu. In addition, the commune of spiritual tattooists was also established by a group of spiritual tattooists selected by the Empire, led by Lu Boya. The founding of Green Deer School was also related to Lu Boya. Under the decree of the current emperor, the dean and Lu Boya jointly founded the first school of the Empire. The character Qing represented the surname of the dean, and Lu represented the surname of Lu Boya. The system of selecting talents for the Empire through county test, province test, and nation test was also compiled and formulated by Lu Boya and implemented and promoted by the current emperor. At the same time, the establishment of the Dark Templar, the Bloodthirsty Camp, and the assessment system of spiritual tattooists were all more or less related to Lu Boya. Lin Sun was stunned when he read this. He could imagine that Master Lu had left footprints in the Empire, but he didn't expect that he had left so many footprints and had such a profound influence on the Empire. The existence of the Academy of Spiritual Implements, Green Deer School, the Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, the Dark Templar, and the Bloodthirsty Camp were all important tools of the Empire, affecting the whole situation of the Empire. Who could believe that there was wisdom from Lu Boya in all of them? Even such a strange treasure as the armor with spiritual tattoos was imparted by Lu Boya and then popularized in the Empire. At the end, Lin Sun finally understood why the situation in the lower world was so different from that in the ancient Desolation Domain. In the ancient Desolation Domain, there were many ancient orthodoxies and tens of thousands of races. But in the ancient Desolation Domain, there was no country like Xiao Empire, no Academy of Spiritual Implements, no commune of spiritual tattooists, no spiritual tattooed warships, and no spiritual tattooed armor. It could be said that Xiao Empire was located in the lower world and was extremely inconspicuous, far from being compared with the ancient Desolation domain. But in Xiao Empire, there was a different pattern of cultivation. There was no doubt that all of this must have an inseparable relationship with Liu Boya. Why was Liu Boya able to accomplish this? In addition to being a terrifying figure like a quasi-emperor, he didn't belong to the lower world or the ancient Desolation domain, but came from the other side of the starry sky. These messages are all sealed in the imperial treasury and are extremely scattered. If you didn't ask me to collect them, I couldn't believe that Master Liu could be so powerful. Zhao Jingxian sat down on one side, her tone full of admiration. To have done so many great things in the empire, yet to hide his achievements and fame, this kind of demeanor, even I am filled with admiration. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. Even I don't know these things, let alone you. But I can't find out anything about his origin or other information. It's like a blank. Zhao Jingxian frowned. It's very abnormal that he did so many things for the empire without being known. Lin Sun said, I was raised by him, but I didn't know these things until now. It's indeed abnormal, but I know the reason. You know? Zhao Jingxian was surprised. Lin Sun sighed softly. It's complicated to explain. In short, the reason why he hid his identity and covered up things about himself all these years was that he didn't want to be discovered by his enemies. Enemies? Zhao Jingxian became more and more surprised. Lin Sun nodded and said, I'll tell you these things later. Even I haven't figured out the truth yet. I only have some speculations. Zhao Jingxian nodded. She knew Lin Sun well. He would never hide anything from her. Then she said another thing. By the way, I imprisoned the 9th prince and his mother in the imperial mausoleum. How are you going to deal with them? Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhao Jingxian, saying, one of them is your half-brother, and the other is your father's concubine. It's not appropriate for me to intervene. It's better to wait for your father to come back and let him deal with it. A smile appeared on Zhao Jingxuan's beautiful face. I know you're worried about me. In fact, you don't have to do this at all. As long as you want, I can help you. Lin Sun smiled. Forget it. It will make your father feel embarrassed. The corners of Zhao Jingxuan's moist lips curled up, and it carried a trace of indescribable pride. You don't know this, but Imperial Father dotes on me the most. He isn't here right now, so we'll act first and report to him later. Even if we're punished, could it be that Imperial Father would place righteousness before family? Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. Alas, I finally understand what it means to help outsiders. Zhao Jingxian was ashamed and annoyed. She glared at Lin Sun. Isn't it because of you? How dare you laugh at me? This is the Imperial Palace, my territory. Believe it or not, I will castrate you and make you a little eunuch in the Imperial Palace. Lin Sun suddenly broke into a cold sweat. In the end, Lin Sun didn't make a decision without authorization. The reason was very simple. For him, the 9th prince and his mother were doomed to spend the rest of their lives guarding the Imperial Mausoleum. But more importantly, the 9th prince and his mother had an inseparable relationship with Zhao Jingxian and the current emperor. Lin Sun couldn't be too ruthless in this matter. However, what Lin Sun didn't know was that Zhao Jingxian had already issued a secret decree to abolish the cultivation of the 9th prince and his mother, Meng Rong. Now the mother and son were both disabled. Such a punishment was even crueler than killing them. There's no time to lose. Come with me to the Sleeping Moon House. After the discussion, Zhao Jingxian stood up and said, my father didn't leave any clues when they left, but I already know that they went to the bloodthirsty battlefield. And I've learned that if we want to go to the bloodthirsty battlefield, we can only go to the Sleeping Moon House and find a man named Du So. Du So? Lin Sun suddenly remembered that before he went to the bloodthirsty battlefield, Zhao Tailai, the bloodthirsty lord, also took him to the Sleeping Moon House and had a delicious meal there. Of course, he also saw the old man called Du So. Until now, Lin Sun still remembered that Zhao Tailai had secretly warned him that this Du So was not a simple person. P.S. The second update is here. There's no more tonight. Something is wrong with my thinking. The next plot needs to be carefully sorted out. In addition, there are only about 50 monthly votes left for the 5th place. If you have tickets, Please vote for me. Chapter 1434. He abandoned the Tao and cultivated himself alone. No one in the mortal world can kill him. This was Zhao Tailai's evaluation of Du So, the owner of the Sleeping Moon House. At this time, thinking of this old man, Lin Sun suddenly realized that Ba Qi, the quasi-emperor who brought Yun Qingbai to the mortal world, once said that there was a real emperor in the mortal world, and no one could kill this Du So. Could it be that the emperor mentioned by Ba Qi was Du So? Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but look strange. Was the old man really so powerful? Let's go have a look. Lin Sun was also interested and curious. Of course, the purpose of meeting Du So was to go to the bloodthirsty battlefield. The ultimate purpose of Lin Sun's return to the mortal world this time was to find the way to become a saint. The current emperor once said that there was also a great opportunity for Lin Sun to become a saint in the mortal world. Now, the current emperor, the empress, and other terrifying existences in the mortal world had left for the bloodthirsty battlefield more than 10 years ago. This made Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian speculate that the so-called opportunity to become a saint might be in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Lin Sun would not forget that there was an extremely strange and dangerous area in the bloodthirsty battlefield, the mulberry forest. There was a mysterious ice and snow tree standing in the sky, with a golden cicada lying on it, exuding a sacred, obscure, and unfathomable aura. There was also a cold and violent white cicada, which could crack the sky with a cry, startling everyone. There was a blood-colored moth with a holy aura, flapping its wings in the fog. There was a green dragon with a body of thousands of meters long, lying dormant under the earth. Its pupils were as deep as the universe, with horrible visions of the rising and falling of the sun and the sinking of the moon and the changing of time. There was a spiritual broken spear flying in the air, as if possessed by the god of war. There was an enchanting golden flower emitting golden sword light, tearing the heaven and the earth apart. Lin Sun would never forget that when he left the mulberry forest, there had been a shocking change. Green clouds condensed into flowers and fell from the sky. A mysterious and ancient Taoist palace appeared in the world. Just the stairs alone had 9,999 steps, as if it was a stairway to heaven. The aura emitted by the Tao Palace covered the heavens and the earth. It was divine and brilliant, and it dyed the mysterious area in the depths of the mulberry forest with a divine and magnificent luster. Everything seemed so mysterious. Before returning to the mortal world, Lin Sun had roughly guessed that if there was an opportunity to become a saint in the mortal world, it must be in two regions. The other was the ruins of End, located in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea. It was one of the four ancient ruins of Tao, and it was the most mysterious and terrifying. The other was the mulberry forest in the bloodthirsty battlefield. There were also incredible scenes of holiness. He also learned that the current emperor, the empress, the dean of the Green Deer Academy, and other important figures of the empire had gone to the bloodthirsty battlefield more than 10 years ago. This made Lin Sun realize that they were most likely going to the mulberry forest, in a remote and quiet area in the northwest corner of the Forbidden City. A simple and unadorned courtyard was located in the middle of it. On the courtyard gate, there was a horizontal board, embracing stars and sleeping moon residents. The handwriting was crooked, just like the graffiti of a child, which was unbearable to look at. Arriving here, Zhao Jingxian couldn't help but wonder, is it really here? This was the second time Lin Sun came here. With a trace of reminiscence on his face, he said, "It's indeed here. I didn't expect that such an immortal name could be a restaurant." He remembered that he was only in the Tao Insight realm at that time. Now, after many years, he was already a supreme king in the seventh retribution of longevity realm. Now his reputation not only spread throughout the empire, but also became the most terrible enemy in the hearts of the 9 tribes of voodoo barbarians. To Lin Sun and Zhao Jingshuan's surprise, when they entered the moon and embracing stars, they found that there were already guests. On a wooden table, There were 4 dishes, a pot of wine, and 2 wine glasses. Beside the wooden table, there was a skinny old man with sparse hair. He was the grumpy due south. They hadn't seen each other for many years, yet he was still that cruel and arrogant appearance, and there wasn't the slightest change in him. Opposite to do so, there was also an old man in a gray robe. His hair and beard were gray, and his face was wrinkled like ravines. He looked extremely old. His sitting posture was upright, while his body emitted the aura of time, and it gave others a feeling of vicissitudes of life that assaulted the face. Only his eyes were clear and clean like an infant's, and they were clear to the point they seemed to be able to reflect the deepest secrets in one's heart. But both Do So and the old man's breath were very ordinary. Ordinary people wouldn't take a second look at them. But Lin Sun's cultivation was no longer comparable to that in the past. At a glance, he could tell that although Do So's breath was ordinary, he couldn't capture his breath or figure in his spiritual awareness at all. In other words, if Lin Sun closed his eyes, he couldn't detect Do So's existence at all by the power of his soul. His breath seemed to be completely non-existent, which was extremely magical. As for the old man's aura, it was like the calm surface of the water. It seemed ordinary and unremarkable, but it gave people a feeling that it was vast and boundless. Lin Sun also knew this old man. He was the old priest of the observatory. Before leaving the mortal world for the ancient desolation, Lin Sun had entered the observatory and talked with the old priest once. They also talked about Master Lu Boya. At that time, the old priest once said that Master Lu, who was robbed in the mine prison, was very likely to have something to do with the way of defying heaven and changing fate. Now Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked when he thought about it. He already knew the truth of destroying the mine prison. It was indeed related to the way of defying heaven and changing fate, because the heaven-accessing place had the power to defy heaven and change fate. How could Lin Sun not be surprised that the old priest could make such an inference? These thoughts flashed through Lin Sun's mind, but they brought a kind of mood fluctuation to Lin Sun. He didn't expect that a few clues and a few words back then would actually contain so many secrets that he hadn't noticed. Before, Lin Sun thought that the old priest of the observatory had also gone to the bloodthirsty battlefield with the current emperor. But he didn't expect to see the old priest sitting with Du So when he entered the moon-embracing star's house. Greetings, two seniors. Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian saluted together. Here come 2 more freeloaders. Du So rolled his eyes and said, "Fortunately, you are qualified to sit." The old priest smiled slightly and looked at Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian for a moment with his clear eyes. Then he said, "Not only are you qualified, but you also came back at the right time." Saying this, he stood up and said, "I'll wait for you at the observatory." Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian were both stunned. They both realized that both Du So and the old priest seemed to have known that they would come. "Sit down, I'll cook something for you." The old priest left. Du So also got up and went into the kitchen to cook. Zhao Jingxian wanted to say something, but was stopped by Lin Sun. Lin Sun said with a smile, "This is the old man's character." They sat down. Not long after, Du So prepared some dishes again. They were all very common, but the meat and vegetables matched well. In addition, he prepared a pot of wine for them. Lin Sun picked up the chopsticks and ate quickly. Although he had tasted a lot of delicious food over the years, tasting the dishes cooked by Du So still gave Lin Sun a kind of incomparable enjoyment. The tip of his tongue seemed to loosen all the taste buds, and an indescribable, wonderful taste exploded all over his body. Looking at Lin Sun's enjoyment, Zhao Jingxian also picked up the chopsticks and tasted a dish of green vegetables. After just one bite, her eyes widened as if she couldn't believe it. Then, she didn't hold back and started to gorge herself. She ate happily. With their current realm, they could already abstain from food, but the dishes cooked by Du So were too delicious. During this process, Du So sat on one side, squinting his eyes and looking at Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian from time to time without saying anything. When they were full, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. The meat of the black tengu is delicious enough, but it's not even 1/10 of the taste of these dishes. Zhao Jingxian nodded in agreement. Du So sneered, "It's just dog meat. It's not good enough. When you taste dragon liver, phoenix marrow, and rock wing, you will understand what is really delicious." "Have you eaten dragon liver, phoenix marrow, and rock wing?" Lin Sun asked. The names of dragon liver, phoenix marrow, and rock wing were enough to make people tremble. Du So snorted coldly. "Nonsense. You can't even imagine how many delicacies I've eaten. Cut the crap. You've already eaten. Tell me why you're here." "Senior, we're here to head to the bloodthirsty battlefield. I wonder if you can give us some pointers?" asked Zhao Jingxian. "Your father left this for you." Du So casually tossed a jade slip into Zhao Jingshuan's hand. Zhao Jingxian sized it up and immediately immersed herself in it, not saying a word. "What about you?" Du So glanced at Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't stand on ceremony and asked, "I heard that there's a chance to become a sage in the lower realm. Senior, do you think this opportunity is in the bloodthirsty battlefield?" A mocking smile appeared on Du So's lips. "You're only at the longevity 7th tribulation realm, and you're already thinking about becoming a sage. Aren't you biting off more than you can chew?" Lin Sun said disapprovingly, "If I'm willing, I can step into the longevity 8th tribulation realm at any time. As for the longevity 9th tribulation realm, it's destined to be nothing to me." Du So sneered. "What if the forbidden Tao tribulation descends?" Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed slightly. He realized that Du So had probably seen through some of his mysteries and knew that he was cultivating the 3 paths. This was extremely unbelievable. If Du So was an ordinary person, how could he casually mention the tribulation he would face? Could it be that he was really an emperor? After a while, Lin Sun calmed down and said indifferently, "The great era is coming. It's unprecedented. Everything is possible. If I were afraid of the forbidden Tao tribulation, I wouldn't have chosen this path." He'd seriously pondered this question for a long time while he was in the despair region, and he'd been silently preparing for it. Seeing Lin Sun so calm, Du So was a little surprised. He stared at Lin Sun with his turbid eyes and said, "Interesting. P.S. As usual, 2 updates in a row." Chapter 1435. Immediately, Du So nodded. "You guessed right. There's indeed a great opportunity in a mortal world that can help you become a saint." Before Lin Sun could feel happy, Du So said, "Unfortunately, you are still a little far away, or it's very difficult for you to seize this opportunity." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" Du So sighed. "Do you think it's easy to become a saint? Let alone others. Look at you now. Your cultivation of qi refining is barely enough. It's at the level of the 7th retribution of longevity. Especially your cultivation of soul refining. You can already dominate the road of longevity. But your cultivation of body refining is too shallow. You're only at the 2nd retribution of longevity. Although your foundation is solid, you lack real tempering and sublimation. If I'm not wrong, you're cultivating the 9 clarity holy physique technique and the body refinement secret technique passed down by the divine elephant martial emperor. You have to be aware that these 2 inheritances can be said to be treasured scriptures that can shake the world. If you only cultivate one, then perhaps your path on the path of body refinement will be slightly easier. But you have 2 kinds of body refining. Do you know what this means? In layman's terms, it's called biting off more than you can chew. If you can't master these 2 secret methods and turn them into your own, this defect alone is enough to prevent you from entering the threshold of becoming a saint. Body refining, the body becomes a saint. Qi refining, the body becomes a saint. Spirit refining, the body becomes a saint. Although the 3 paths of the Tao lead to the same destination, cultivating all 3 paths of the Tao before becoming a saint isn't a simple task. Just like the Tao test, it's the most dangerous moat in front of you. Speaking of this, Du So seemed to feel thirsty. He picked up the flagon and drank a lot. Then he smacked his lips and continued. If it were in the primitive times, it would not be a problem, because at that time, there was no such bullshit Tao test. If it were before the advent of this great era, it would be no different from courting death if you dare to do this. Fortunately, this grand era has arrived. The order of the world has changed, and its quintessence has recovered. Even if I'm cultivating in 3 paths, I'll still be able to find a trace of hope. However, even though there's hope with your current strength, if you don't make up for your shortcomings in body refinement as soon as possible, then you'll probably be unable to even overcome the Tao tribulation, let alone have extravagant hopes of becoming a saint. It's absolutely wishful thinking. Speaking of this, Dussault glanced at Lin and said, "So, what you need to do now is not to think about how to become a sage, but how to face the forbidden Tao test." After listening to the long speech, Lin Sun's expression became uncertain, and he had a sense of being woken up by a sudden warning. After returning to the mortal world from the ancient desolation realm, everything had been smooth sailing for him. No matter if it was his cultivation or his work, he hadn't encountered any setbacks. Unknowingly, he had lost a sense of vigilance. This sort of vigilance was targeted towards one's own path towards the Tao, and it was a form of understanding towards the dangerous situations one faced while cultivating. In cultivation, one should not only advance bravely and be fearless of the dangers ahead, but also fight cautiously as if treading on thin ice. Speaking of this, Dussault still looked quite serious. The next moment, he said complacently, "What do you think? I said that you are biting off more than you can chew, right?" Lin Sun originally admired and appreciated Dussault, but when he saw Dussault's complacent look, the admiration in his heart suddenly disappeared. He said indifferently, "Only by looking far can you know what your goal is so that you won't get lost on the path of seeking Tao and go astray. How can this be called biting off more than you can chew?" Dussault's face changed. He picked up the flagon and put it to his mouth, sneering, "Well, tell me, how far have you seen?" Lin Sun thought of a realm he had comprehended when he passed the 8th test of Green Cloud Path. He said, "Between existence and nothingness, life and death are created. With the universe in your heart, you can develop and control the universe." Puff! Dussault spurted out the wine in his mouth and coughed violently. His thin face turned red and his hands trembled. He looked at Lin Sun as if he was looking at a monster. "Who told you this?" He didn't believe that Lin Sun could see the realm of creating something out of nothing, which was rare even for emperors. Lin Sun was also surprised and said, "Do I need someone else to tell me this?" Dussault's expression changed. He stared at Lin Sun and asked suspiciously, "Did you really see it yourself?" At this moment, being stared at by Dussault's cloudy eyes, Lin Sun felt a little uncomfortable for the first time, as if all his secrets were going to be seen through. He couldn't help but frown. Is there anything wrong with this realm? Or should I say, it's a path that has already been proven? Dussault let out a long breath and murmured, "If you didn't lie to me, you did see far enough. Alas, monster, I can't say more." He shook his head. When he looked at Lin Sun, his eyes had become much gentler. He said, "The realm you saw is not wrong. You will understand it later. It's too complicated to tell you now. The Great Way is invisible and endless. You can't understand its mystery unless you explore it yourself." At this time, Zhao Jingxian put away the jade slip in her hand. She had already memorized the contents. She looked a little absent-minded and said, "Lin Sun, I may not be able to go to the bloodthirsty battlefield with you." Lin Sun was stunned. "Why?" "Her realm is not enough," Dussault said softly, and then said, "The most important thing is that the opportunity in that place is too great for her to reach." Zhao Jingxian smiled bitterly. Indeed, her current cultivation level had already broken through to the 4th tribulation of longevity realm. But according to the jade slip left behind by her father, if she wanted to go to the place of great opportunity in the bloodthirsty battlefield, she needed to be at least at the 7th retribution of longevity realm. If she didn't have enough strength, she wouldn't be able to get the opportunity she needed even if she went there. Because the opportunity there was too great, so great that it was enough to make sages crazy. Lin Sun frowned. "Even if I can't get the opportunity, it's okay to go and experience it, right?" "Experience?" Du So sneered. Should I say that you are too arrogant or ignorant? I can tell you clearly that even if you go there, you won't be able to reach some of the great opportunities. Because those opportunities are not something you can think about at the moment, and they have nothing to do with you. What kind of opportunity? Lin Sun frowned. Du So's eyes were deep as he said, if a true sage can be caught, he can become a great sage. If a great sage can be caught, he can become a sage king. If a sage king can be caught, become an emperor? Lin Sun was shocked. Du So chuckled. He didn't confirm it, but he didn't deny it either. Even Zhao Jingxian couldn't help but gasp at this moment. Such an opportunity was indeed too great. It was so great that she couldn't reach it at her current realm. Lin Sun felt his scalp tingle and said, there must be many people above the sage realm fighting for such a great opportunity, right? Du So nodded with a smile. Lin Sun said, great sage? Sage king? Or quasi-emperor? Du So was still smiling and said, it's possible. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. Isn't it no different from courting death if I go there? A group of tigers fighting for food. As for me, I'm just an ant. Even if I'm ignored there, I'm afraid I'll be accidentally trampled to death by the claws of these tigers. Du So put away his smile and said seriously, no, in front of those big guys, you're even less than an ant. Lin Sun was speechless. Senior, it's not good to hit people like this. Zhao Jingxian said coldly. Du So laughed. Alas, I'm just joking. Don't take it seriously. There's nothing absolute in this world. Since your father asked this boy to go, how could he not take good care of him? Zhao Jingxuan's expression eased a lot. Lin Sun realized that the current emperor must have been prepared for such an arrangement. It was impossible for him to die. Go. I've told you what I should. Come back in 10 days, and I'll send you to the bloodthirsty battlefield. Du So waved his hand and ordered Lin Sun to leave. My father said that the old priest of the observatory will arrange for me to go to the ultimate. At that time, I can visit Old To by the way. After leaving the Sleeping Moon House, Zhao Jingxian and Lin Sun walked side by side on the bustling street. Not long after returning to the mortal world, Old Toad left alone and went to the burial sea grave in the depths of the Soul Oblivion Sea to look for some clues related to himself. At that time, he had agreed to meet Lin Sun and the others in half a year. Now, the deadline was not far away. Lin Sun realized that the emperor had arranged everything for Zhao Jingxian. He was relieved and said, that's good. Go to the bloodthirsty battlefield with peace of mind. When you get there, don't force yourself. Just follow my father's arrangement. Zhao Jingxian said softly. Well, you too. The ultimate is extremely mysterious and unpredictable. Zhao Jingxian interrupted Lin Sun with a smile. We went there together. How can I not know? Don't worry. Before long, they came to the observatory. There's already a boy standing there, welcoming the two of them. At the top of the observatory, the old priest called Lin Sun alone and said, do you remember that we had a chat here before you went to the ancient desolation realm? Lin Sun nodded and said yes. The old priest's eyes were as deep as the sea, clear and bright. He said slowly, at that time, I divined for you to see whether your future was good or bad. But do you know what I saw? Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. The next moment, the old priest said, in front of you is a vast fog. You can't see it. His voice was old, low, with a unique sense of vicissitudes. And behind you, the sky and the earth are collapsing, all things are destroyed, and everything is gone. Lin Sun was stiff all over, and his eyes were full of divine light. He said, Senior, what do you mean? I can't understand the divinations. The wrinkles on the old priest's face were intertwined with a trace of complexity. I tell you this just to let you understand that the road of changing your fate is not easy. You must be careful in the future. Chapter 1436. Lin Sun was silent for a moment, took a deep breath, and saluted to the old priest. He looked calm. The road ahead was foggy and unknown. This was the best. If the future was fixed, it would be too boring after all. If the sky and earth collapsed behind him, everything would cease to exist. To seek the great Tao, one had to move forward, so why would one care about what happened behind them? This divination might mean something, But Lin Sun didn't care about it. He had seen himself, so his mind was so firm that it was impossible for him to be affected by this confusion. Before long, Lin Sun left alone. Zhao Jingxian was about to go to the ultimate ruins, and the old priest would arrange her itinerary. Lin Sun couldn't intervene in these things. "I'll wait for you to come back." Before leaving, Zhao Jingxian looked at Lin Sun seriously with calm eyes. "Take good care of yourself." "You too." Lin Sun reached out and hugged the girl in front of him. 3 days later, the sky was clear and the Forbidden City was as prosperous and noisy as before. The streets extending in all directions were crowded with pedestrians and carriages. It was even more lively than before. Today's empire had pacified the demon beasts in its territory, and the disaster of voodoo barbarians in the border area had long been resolved. There were many things waiting to be done in the world. Suddenly, the sky darkened and the light was obscured. Black clouds as heavy as lead covered the entire sky of the Forbidden City like a tide. In an instant, the day seemed to fall into an eternal night. There was a sudden commotion in the city. Cultivators, peddlers, dignitaries, and ordinary people were all alarmed. What happened? What a terrible tribulation cloud. Many strong people in the imperial palace, Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and a group of aristocratic forces were shocked and depressed. This tribulation cloud was simply too shocking and terrible. Who was going to pass the tribulation? Countless eyes finally gathered on heart-cleansing peak, where a huge vortex of tribulation cloud like an inverted funnel emerged in the sky. The vortex floated quietly, but it emitted a terrible and boundless aura of destruction, which seemed to make the world tremble. In the Forbidden City, everyone felt oppressed and suffocated, especially the practitioners who were most sensitive to the heaven's might and were more strongly affected by it. Along with the passage of time, the tribulation clouds that were dense like ink gathered more and more, and the originally bright and beautiful day had transformed into darkness that was like an eternal night, causing all living beings to feel oppressed and horrified. The top of heart-cleansing peak, with his hands behind his back, Lin Sun stood on the edge of the cliff, his clothes and thick black hair fluttering in the wind. He looked calm and composed. The fated disaster had finally arrived. But Lin Sun's heart was calm, because he had waited for too long, and he had long since lost all fear. In the distance, Lin Zhong, Young, Ku, Zhu Laosan, Vulture, and other big shots of Lin family, as well as clansmen, villagers of Feiyun village, maids and servants were all looking at them nervously. This tribulation was so shocking that they could hardly breathe. How could they not be nervous for Lin Sun? Boom! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning exploded in the depths of the dense black tribulation clouds, and it was so loud that it shook the sky and covered the surroundings. It shook the void so violently that it began to distort. In the Forbidden City, some practitioners' hearts twitched fiercely. They saw stars and their souls shook violently. Even if it was an expert at the King realm, his expression was heavy and extremely astounded. How could such a tribulation be so terrible? It can only prove that the head of Lin family and heart-cleansing peak is too powerful, so the tribulation he encountered is not ordinary. Longevity, tribulation. How can he survive it? At this moment, the huge Forbidden City was covered with black clouds, and the atmosphere was oppressive. Countless big shots were guessing and watching. Lin Sun, the well-deserved first in longevity king realm in the empire, wiped out the demons and scared off the 9 branches of voodoo barbarians. He saved the empire from the abyss of suffering alone and was remembered, appreciated, and respected by all living beings in the world. He was like a legend, destined to be recorded in the annals of history and be remembered forever. Today, he would usher in the 8th tribulation of longevity, the fated disaster. On the observatory, the old priest looked into the distance in silence with deep eyes. In the moon house with stars and arms, Duso seemed to be annoyed and muttered, "It's just a tribulation." Who was he trying to scare by making such a big noise? Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, the terrifying sound of thunder resounded out like a drum being struck by a god. It rumbled and resounded within the black clouds, and it shook the heavens and the earth to the point it seemed to be shaking. Do So, who was annoyed, was stunned and showed a meaningful smile. It's interesting. Such a powerful fated disaster. I haven't seen it before. Indeed, I haven't seen it before. On the observatory, the old priest murmured, and his eyes became more and more deep. Crack, crack, crack. Before long, dazzling lightning tore the black clouds. The dazzling light cut through the darkness and illuminated the world like hundreds of millions of silver snakes dancing wildly. Countless people in the Forbidden City were stunned by such a spectacle. Some ordinary people had knelt on the ground, trembling and murmured, as if they were praying for the blessings of the gods. Here it comes, on the top of heart-cleansing peak. Lin Sun was not nervous at all. Instead, he smiled leisurely. He even picked up a wine gourd and drank freely. His robe and black hair fluttered in the wind. He drank alone under the whirlpool of tribulation clouds. Above his head, the thunder was raging and the lightning was flowing. His calm, composed, and peerless bearing caused others to be unable to help but be stunned. Boom! Finally, a strand of gorgeous tribulation lightning surged into appearance from within the vortex, and it actually transformed into a rain of light that sprayed down. Every single strand of rain of light was crystalline, translucent, multicolored, and formed from the most terrifying tribulation lightning. The rain of light that filled the sky descended together. That shocking scene was magnificent and brilliant to the extreme, and also terrifying to the extreme. Abnormal. Do So stared with his eyes wide open, as if he couldn't believe it. It's really extraordinary. On the observatory, the old priest seemed to be surprised. As for other people in the Forbidden City, they only felt that the rain of light pouring down was like the fairy light from the sky. It was gorgeous, blazing, magnificent, dazzling, and soul-stirring. Only some old monsters in the king's realm could understand how terrible this thunder was. Just looking at it from a distance, they felt frightened and scared. On the top of heart-cleansing peak, Lin Sun didn't take any action. He was still drinking. However, a bottomless abyss suddenly appeared on his body, and it was slowly rotating. All kinds of profound truths floated in the abyss, deducing the grand scene of the fusion of water and fire, the coexistence of yin and yang, the rotation of Tai Chi, and the roar of the real dragon. Before the endless thunder rain covered Lin Sun's figure, it was swallowed up by the slowly rotating abyss. It disappeared without a trace like a clay ox entering the sea. From the beginning to the end, there was not a single ripple or collision. Only Lin Sun's figure seemed more and more tall and gorgeous. All the experts who noticed the scene were dumbfounded. Is this even possible? From a distance, heart-cleansing peak was like a whale swallowing water. It opened its big mouth and swallowed all the thunder. Such a spectacle was rare in one's life. Abnormal, it's really abnormal. Do So murmured. The old priest let out a sigh of admiration. Boom! In the sky, black clouds were rolling and thunder was rumbling. The dense lightning was like hundreds of millions of pythons and dragons roaring and rolling. The dazzling light illuminated the world. The thunder became more and more terrible. It was like a long waterfall hanging down. It was completely derived from the thunder. It was mighty and turbulent. The huge Forbidden City was completely filled with a kind of oppressive and terrible destructive atmosphere. Countless creatures trembled. Even the old monsters of King's realm felt cold all over, and their hearts were hanging in their throats. They had never seen such a great tribulation. It was going to destroy the world and eliminate all the vitality in the world. But it was incredible that Lin Sun, on the top of heart-cleansing peak, seemed to be unaware of it. He raised his head and drank happily. No matter how terrifying the tribulation lightning that could terrify even gods and ghosts changed, it was still devoured by the abyss that appeared around him. For a moment, many people were dumbfounded. How terrifying was his cultivation? How much confidence did he have that he dared to vanquish the lightning tribulation that filled the sky in such a relaxed manner? This seemed to be too shocking. It even subverted people's cognition and imagination. The fetters of fate are nothing more than this. The old priest was thoughtful. He vaguely felt Lin Sun's foundation and ability at the moment. Du So smiled. That's interesting. It didn't take long. Both the old priest and the Du So squinted their eyes. Their expressions gradually turned serious, to the point of being stern. In the sky, the clouds gradually calmed down, the thunder became low, and the lightning became obscure. But the atmosphere between heaven and earth was more and more oppressive. Soon, some strongmen of King's realm also noticed that something was wrong, and their faces changed suddenly. As for all living beings in the Forbidden City, they were surprised and didn't notice the mystery. They all thought that the vast thunder tribulation was coming to an end. In fact, it was coming to an end. But before the end, there was an extremely terrible thunder tribulation accumulating and brewing. It was coming. Before long, the world was silent, the clouds stopped, and the lightning and thunder disappeared. A strange silence enveloped heaven and earth. That kind of oppressive force made all practitioners feel drowning and suffocating. They were stiff all over and almost couldn't bear it. On the top of Heart-Cleansing Peak, Lin Sun, who raised his head and drank the last drop of wine, threw the gourd away. Then he suddenly looked up. In the depths of his dark eyes, the thunder tribulation that was accumulating above the sky was reflected clearly, but it couldn't set off any waves in his eyes. Whoosh! With his clothes fluttering, Lin Sun stepped into the air. From a distance, it was like a big abyss suddenly swept up from the earth, shining with infinite Taoist light. At the same time, in the sky, in the depths of the stagnant whirlpool of clouds, a thunder tribulation swept out silently. The shape of the thunder tribulation showed the shape of a spear, obscure, dark, and entangled with the supreme power of law. At that moment, the world was dim, and the sun and moon were dim. It was just a thunder tribulation, but it was like a spear of judgment representing the will of God coming to the world. The whole city was shocked, and all living beings trembled. P.S. As usual, 2 updates in a row. Chapter 1437. This was the last tribulation thunder, but it was silent, like a spear of judgment coming to the world. At this moment, all living beings were trembling, and the whole city was silent. Even Du So and the old priest couldn't help narrowing their eyes with a solemn look. On the other hand, amidst this deathly silent atmosphere, Lin Sun, who was standing in the air, suddenly flashed up like a ray of light that shot into the sky, and he stretched out his hand to grab the tribulation lightning spear. Countless eyes were frozen at this moment, and their minds went blank. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so direct and bold. Du So and the old priest were both dizzy and caught off guard. That was the most terrifying tribulation lightning. Even they could sense that the power of that tribulation lightning was extremely unusual. But Lin Sun directly took action. Thinking about it carefully, this was the first time that Lin Sun really took action since he passed the tribulation. Before, he had been drinking and ignoring the tribulation thunder. But who could have thought that as soon as he took action, there would be such an earth-shattering scene? Boom! A loud explosion broke the silence of the world and knocked on everyone's heart fiercely. Lin Sun had already firmly grasped the bolt of tribulation lightning, and a peerlessly terrifying and dazzling ray of light erupted between them, causing the space there to rumble and collapse. Looking from a distance, it was like a god subduing a dragon from the sky. He looked incomparably brave and domineering. Boom! The tribulation thunder was like a spear, struggling violently. The obscure lightning representing the power of heaven was flowing, producing a terrible destructive breath like a landslide and a tsunami. But to everyone's shock, Lin Sun suddenly let out a long roar, grabbed the tribulation thunder with both hands, and then exerted his strength. Crack! Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the battle spear was forcefully broken into 2. Those old monsters of the King realm were all stunned, and their hearts were filled with endless shock. All living beings in the Forbidden City only saw a godlike figure breaking a light in the sky. Du So suddenly patted his thigh. It's so damn interesting." The old priest smiled instead. A wisp of gratification and indescribable emotion appeared on his face that was densely covered in wrinkles. Rumble. The thunder was broken and suddenly turned into a terrible rain of thunder and lightning. It exploded in Lin Sun's palm, illuminating the whole world. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was like a stone standing in the stormy waves, motionless no matter how the waves washed him. This scene was like a brand, becoming an indelible mark in the hearts of everyone in the Forbidden City. Even after many years, people still remembered that there was once a person who broke the heavenly tribulation lightning and broke the heavenly tribulation. In that instant, his figure was like a ray of light that illuminated the sky. On this day, Lin Sun passed the 8th tribulation of longevity and broke through the fate disaster. It shocked the Forbidden City and made all living beings tremble. When the tribulation clouds dissipated, the darkness faded, and daylight reappeared in the world, everyone felt as if they were in a dream. With this child in the Lin clan, no one can shake them. Many families and forces sighed inwardly. Young Master Lin is truly a god. The city was in an uproar, everyone discussing excitedly. On Heart-Cleansing Peak, there was also a jubilation. Every clansman of the Lin family looked proud, awe-inspiring, reverent, and fanatical. Even the villagers of Feiyun Village, those servants were so excited that they danced with joy. Today, Lin Sun didn't need any praise at all. As long as he was there, he would be a legend that amazed the world. And this legend belonged to their Lin family. Whoosh, after passing the tribulation, Lin Sun meditated quietly. He only felt that his whole body was smooth, his mind was clear, and his spirit was clear. He felt that he could follow his heart and follow the rules. Passing the fate disaster was like breaking an invisible shackle on the road of longevity and breaking free from a kind of invisible bondage. He was free and unrestrained. Besides that, the essence, energy, spirit, and cultivation in his body had undergone a tremendous change, and he was much stronger than before. But the biggest gain was a kind of self-confidence, an invincible will. Lin Sun was very clear that the path he was walking on was different from the world, and also different from the path of others of the same generation. This road could be called unprecedented. Because of this, it seemed incomparably difficult and dangerous. But in the same way, every time his cultivation advanced a step, the power he gained was also extremely amazing, which was incomparable to others. The 9th tribulation, named longevity, is the last obstacle on the road of longevity. But as long as there is no mistake, it can't stop me. Lin Sun pondered while feeling the changes of the power around him. The most urgent thing to consider is the prohibition of Tao. Duso once said that there was a defect in his body. If it couldn't be made up, it was very likely that he couldn't pass the prohibition of Tao. This defect was the cultivation of body refining. From now on, I should focus on body refining. Before the arrival of the prohibition of Tao, I should thoroughly integrate the 9 pure holy body scripture and the inheritance of divine elephant martial emperor. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with a touch of firmness. The prohibition of Tao was the most terrible and dangerous tribulation before becoming a sage. It was like a natural moat. After the primitive times, no one could surpass it. Now, it happened to be a great era, which gave Lin Sun a chance to pass this tribulation. So in any case, he must firmly grasp it. After I leave, I don't know when I can come back. Among these treasures, there are some holy treasures, king medicines, and divine treasures. They will be kept by Granddad Zhong in Lin family. 7 days later, Lin Sun found Lin Zhong and entrusted him with the task. Today, he was going to Sleeping Moon House to enter the bloodthirsty battlefield with the help of Due South. Before leaving, he must explain and entrust some things to Lin Zhong. As he said, Lin Sun took out a storage bracelet and handed it to Lin Zhong. In this storage bracelet were some of the most precious treasures collected by Lin Sun, such as all kinds of king medicines, divine materials, and some holy treasures, such as the pitch-black alms bowl obtained from Gu Fozi and a big halberd obtained from Bai Long Ting. There were 7 or 8 treasures in total. In the outside world, each of them was enough to make sages drool. But for Lin Sun, although these treasures were valuable, they were not necessary. Instead of gathering dust in his hands, it was better to stay in Lin family. Young master, you must take care of yourself. Although Lin Zhong knew that this day would come, his heart was still full of reluctance and worry when this day came. Granddad Zhong, you should also take care of yourself. On Heart Cleansing Peak, I am most concerned about Granddad Zhong. In the future, you can leave the trivial things in your hands to others and spend the rest of your time on cultivation. I believe that with your aptitude, you are destined to embark on the road of immortality in the future. Lin Sun looked serious. When he first entered the Forbidden City, Lin Zhong had been following him silently. For Lin Sun, Lin Zhong was his most trusted and closest elder, who was irreplaceable. He had left some ancient books and experiences of cultivation to Lin Zhong and prepared the spiritual medicines and treasures needed for Lin Zhong's cultivation. He did this in the hope that Lin Zhong could become stronger and live longer. Good. Lin Zhong was very emotional and said, I must live until you come back. Lin Sun was speechless and said with a smile, Who knows? Maybe I will come back in a while. I heard a saying that as long as you can see each other in the future, it's not a farewell. Don't be too sad, Granddad Zhong. Lin Zhong took a deep breath and nodded, I understand. Next, Lin Sun met Young Ku, Vulture, Zhu Laosan, Lin Huayin, Lin Xiefeng, Red Eagle King, and other important figures of Heart Cleansing Peak. Knowing that Lin Sun was going to set off again, and they didn't know when he would come back, they were more or less reluctant to see him go, but they gave more blessings and exhortations. This made Lin Sun's heart warm. Being cared for by others would not make one feel so lonely. Whether it was familial affection or friendship, it was always better than being alone. Chirp! When Lin Sun was about to leave, suddenly, a rapid chirp sounded from a distance. Then, a fire shadow came through the air. Looking closely, it was a little guy as round as a ball and red all over. Chirp! Lin Sun was stunned. Did this little guy wake up? Many years ago, Qiu had fallen into a strange slumber and had never woken up. When he returned to the mortal world, Lin Sun went to visit this little guy. Unfortunately, Chirp was still sleeping at that time. According to Little Silver's investigation, Chirp was a very rare fire spirit, which was born in the divine fire of nature. This kind of creature was not rare in ancient times. They had different talents and different ways of cultivation. For example, Chirp's way of cultivation was to sleep. Because it was a fire spirit, its life was extremely long and there was almost no trouble of birth, old age, illness, and death. But in the same way, its speed of promotion and transformation was extremely slow. With a whoosh, Chirp's soft and round body bumped into Lin Sun's arms. It had opened a pair of round black eyes and seemed very excited. It kept chirping. Lin Sun reached out and poked Chirp's belly. It was still as soft and elastic as before, like a softball. He couldn't help but feel happy. In the bloodthirsty camp, Chirp accompanied him. After so many years, the little guy was still as charming and adorable as before. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was going to the bloodthirsty battlefield today, so he couldn't take Chirp with him. Until Lin Sun left, Chirp's eyes were full of tears, and it kept chirping. Lin Sun couldn't bear to see it. But in the end, he could only comfort it gently and let it cultivate on Heart Cleansing Peak and wait for him to come back. In the afternoon, at dusk, Lin Sun came to Star Embracing Sleeping Moon House alone. Are you ready? Du So had been waiting there for a long time. Lin Sun nodded. Du So said, Take this thing with you as a token of my appreciation. If you encounter an enemy you can't fight with, you can scare them with this thing. Maybe you can save your life. As he said, he took out a gray domino and threw it to Lin Sun. Chapter 1438. The domino was the size of a palm, gray and inconspicuous. But when it fell into Lin's hand, it was like a towering mountain pressing down on him. Lin was caught off guard and his body trembled. He hurriedly ran his strength to hold the domino firmly in his hand. Is this meant to scare people? Lin Sun was stunned. When he was about to check it with his spiritual awareness, he was stopped by Du So. You'd better not do that if you don't want to be scared to death. Scared to death? Lin Sun was doubtful. But he chose not to try when he saw Du So's serious expression. Du So grinned and said, "Although it's meant to scare people, this treasure is priceless. You must keep it well." Lin Sun frowned. "Can this thing frighten a saint?" Du So said disdainfully, "A saint is nothing. I might as well tell you that this domino can frighten anyone below the Emperor realm. After all, it's a gift from me. How can it be compared with ordinary ones?" There was an indescribable pride in his tone. Lin Sun played with the domino and stared at Du So. "How about I try it on you?" Du So was stunned and said angrily, "It's my thing. How can it frighten me? You'd better stop thinking about it. Remember, this thing can only be used once. Don't use it unless it's a life-and-death situation." After that, he waved his sleeve without giving Lin Sun a chance to respond. In an instant, the two of them disappeared without a trace. There was a forbidden place in the depths of the imperial palace. A simple and old hall stood there. In front of the hall, there was a five-color altar full of vicissitudes, as if it had existed since ancient times. There was a horizontal board hanging above the hall, Bloodthirsty Hall. Lin Sun recognized at first glance that he had been here before. When he entered the bloodthirsty battlefield for the first time, he was brought here by Zhao Tai Lai and left through this ancient transmission formation. However, when he saw the bloodthirsty hall and the ancient transmission formation again, Lin Sun thought of many things. Was this arranged by Master Lu himself? Lin Sun said softly. Du So asked who. Lin Sun said Lu Boya. Du So was surprised. Already know? The establishment of Bloodthirsty Camp is related to Master Lu. How could the existence of Bloodthirsty Hall have nothing to do with Master Lu? Lin Sun sighed with emotion. According to my speculation, Master Lu is likely to be an expert in the Emperor-to-be realm. With his attainments in spiritual tattoos, it's not difficult for him to set up such a transmission formation. Du So grunted and said, "Over 10 years ago, the upheaval of the world erupted completely, and the bloodthirsty battlefield has become completely different. You'll know once you go there." He waved his sleeve. The ancient five-colored altar shone and suddenly produced a strange rumbling sound, as if it had just woken up from its slumber. Lin Sun was about to take action, but he was stopped by Du South. He stared at Lin Sun with a strange look in his eyes. "You have the breath of another creature." Lin Sun was stiff all over. How could this be seen through? Little Silver, come out. His heart stirred. With a swoosh, Little Silver's figure rushed out. Du So's eyes lit up, and he stared at Little Silver for a long while before he laughed and said, "Interesting, a spirit-eating insect that has embarked on the extreme Tao path, awakened its innate magical power, and became a real insect king of the longevity realm. Not even one could be found in ancient times. It seems that this little guy has also obtained a lot of opportunities and benefits in this great era." He saw through Little Silver's background at a glance. Lin Sun was secretly shocked. Was this old guy really in the Emperor-to-be realm? "You could go now." Du So withdrew his gaze and waved his hand, not stopping Little Silver from leaving with Lin Sun. "Senior, goodbye." Lin Sun took a deep breath and strode to the altar with Little Silver. In the next moment, his figure disappeared. Du So watched this scene silently until the teleportation portal returned to silence. Only then did he feel relieved. He let out a long breath and murmured, "Before Zhuge becomes a saint, it all depends on whether you can seize this opportunity to break the forbidden curse of the Tao, the bloodthirsty battlefield." The world was vast. Mountains rose and fell one after another. The rich purple spiritual chi was like a rolling sea of clouds, flowing and steaming in the sky. The mountains and rivers on the earth were picturesque. Every single mountain was extraordinarily beautiful, verdant, and full of vitality. Every river was filled with spiritual mist. When the waves rose and fell, they were covered with a scale-like luster. Even the rocks and plants were crystal clear. The void was filled with rich spiritual chi. Strands of violet, auspicious energy drifted about on the top of a precipitous mountain. A handsome figure stood there as he gazed into the surroundings. His face carried a smear of shock that could not be erased. This person was Lin Sun, who had just arrived at the bloodthirsty battlefield. But at this moment, he suspected that he had come to the wrong place. In Lin Sun's memory, the bloodthirsty battlefield was gray, the earth was gloomy, and the wilderness was vast. There was no grass growing everywhere, and there were signs of desolation. On the ground, rotten and broken corpses were covered with dust, and the air was filled with a bloody and rancid smell. Gloominess, loneliness, blood, depression outlined the gray color of the bloodthirsty battlefield. The most important thing was that there was no spiritual power in the bloodthirsty battlefield. The army of practitioners of the Empire stationed here all needed to rely on elixirs to replenish their strength. But now everything had changed. Between heaven and earth, everything was thriving. The spiritual chi was rich, and the mountains and rivers were beautiful. The rolling spiritual chi and vitality were like a roaring torrent, diffusing between heaven and earth. This was not the bloodthirsty battlefield in his memory. It was a vast, beautiful world like a paradise of immortals. Every flower and grass was condensed with crystal light. Although they were not spiritual materials or elixirs, they were completely different from the plants and could be called spiritual objects. Lin Sun breathed. His mouth and nose were full of fresh, rich, and lively spiritual chi, which made him feel relaxed and happy. Everything has changed in more than 10 years. The spiritual chi here is so rich and pure that it is even better than that in the upper 9 realms of the absolute domain. No, there is a trace of divine power in the spiritual chi between heaven and earth, which is of great benefit to the cultivation of practitioners in the longevity realm. 1 day's cultivation here is equivalent to 1 month's cultivation in the outside world. After a long time, Lin Sun gradually calmed down from the shock and began to perceive the completely different bloodthirsty battlefield. The higher the cultivation realm, the more demanding the demand for resources. A fish could swim happily in a quagmire, but when a fish transformed into a dragon, how could a small quagmire bear it? When Lin Sun was young, his cultivation in the empire was like a fish growing up in a quagmire. Now he was the supreme king of the 8th retribution of longevity realm. If he still cultivated in the empire, he would never be able to step into the absolute saint realm. The reason was very simple. The cultivation resources in the empire were far from enough to meet his needs. What's more, he lacked the opportunity for cultivation. Even though the great changes of the world made the empire different, he could only come to the bloodthirsty battlefield to seek the way to become a saint. No wonder the great emperor once said that the inferior world also had the opportunity to become a saint. With the great changes of the world, the bloodthirsty battlefield was completely different. Lin Sun took a deep breath and completely accepted the reality in front of him. Whoosh! The next moment, Lin Sun disappeared. 2 hours later, Lin Sun's figure floated down on the bank of a mighty river, with a trace of surprise flashing in his eyes. The bloodthirsty battlefield had completely changed. According to his memory, he thought he could find the entrance to the mulberry forest soon. But he never thought that the world here was completely different from what he remembered. It had become many times larger. The place where the sun rises in the opposite direction of the setting sun is the camp of our empire. This was a sentence in the Animal Skin Handbook given to Lin Sun by Zhao Tai Lai when he entered the bloodthirsty battlefield for the first time. But was there any camp of the empire in the bloodthirsty battlefield at this time? Lin Sun thought for a moment, looked at the sky, identified the direction, and planned to set off again. But at this moment, he narrowed his eyes and sensed an extremely pure and amazing spiritual breath at the bottom of the river with his divine sense. With a flash, he had entered the bottom of the river. The river was tumbling, and a fist-sized crystal lay quietly at the bottom of the river, emitting a magnificent and illusory divine luster. What was this? Lin Sun raised his hand and grabbed the crystal in his hand. After looking at it for a while, he was surprised. The crystal was full of pure, divine breath, very much like the legendary divine crystal. Divine crystal was a kind of treasure that had almost disappeared in the outside world. It was extremely rare and could only be produced in the holy spiritual veins. The divine power contained in this thing had an immeasurable promoting effect on the cultivation of practitioners. For the cultivation of sages, ordinary blessed places couldn't meet their needs at all. But if there was divine crystal, the problem of cultivation could be easily solved. Such a treasure was useless even if it fell into the hands of practitioners below the king realm, because the power contained in divine crystal was too high and huge. Ordinary practitioners couldn't bear and refine it at all. As far as Lin Sun knew, such a thing couldn't be found in such a big empire. Even the ancient Desolation territory, only those ancient orthodoxies had it. Divinity origin crystals can actually be condensed in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Lin Sun thought in his heart. It seems that even for sages, this place can be called a treasure place for cultivation. He put away the divine crystal and rushed out from the bottom of the river to start his action. Along the way, under Lin Sun's careful investigation, he collected some divine crystals in succession in the mountains and rivers, big and small, full of divinity. Moreover, in some mountains where the spiritual qi was extremely abundant, there were some rare magic medicines and magic materials, which were also picked up by Lin Sun without hesitation. At this time, Lin Sun had completely concluded that if the upper 9 realms of the absolute peak domain was suitable for the kings on the road to longevity, then the bloodthirsty battlefield could completely meet the needs of the saint realm.